Chapter 1842. You have to protect me, too. At the same time, Zhou Kun, who heard Ji Wu's words, became even more furious. Fuck? I dare you to say that again? Zhou Kun pointed at Ji Wu and couldn't help but wonder why the Ji family was so annoying. Although the two families had been enemies for generations, most of the time, they could still live in peace. After all, even if the two families were like fire and water, they couldn't fight each other every day. Most of the things they did were to drag each other down. However, for some reason, whenever he saw Ji Yun, he couldn't control his temper and wanted to get angry. I said you're not even fit to be a servant in our Ji family. Do you hear me now? Ji Wu repeated helplessly. He looked at Zhou Kun with eyes full of sympathy, as if he was saying, "Poor fellow, you can't understand human language. You're looking for death." Zhou Kun narrowed his eyes and said in an unfriendly tone, "You're wrong, I haven't lived long enough. Why would you seek death?" Ji Wu disagreed with Zhou Kun's words. However, in the next second, Zhou Kun attacked Ji Wu at lightning speed. In an instant, a palm wind with a blue light appeared in front of Ji Wu. Ji Wu hurriedly dodged, but the palm wind still brushed past his body and left a deep bloody mark on his arm. A trace of red blood flowed down from the wound. After gently wiping the blood off his arm, Ji Wu squinted his eyes and looked at Zhou Kun. This fellow's strength was already above theirs, and Zhou Kun was a typical nouveau riche. Therefore, he had an unimaginable number of medicinal pills on him. This also made them, who were originally slightly weaker, have no advantage at all. Unless a miracle appeared now, they were afraid that they would not be able to defeat Zhou Kun. What should they do? He knew very well that even if he and Ji Tao were to die here, nothing could happen to Ji Yun. After all, Ji Yun was the hope of all the members of the Ji family. However, under Zhou Kun's covetous gaze, it would not be easy for them to protect Ji Yun. At this moment, his mind turned and countless plans formed in his mind, but they were all rejected because none of them was the best solution for them at this time. "Young master, Ji Tao and I will think of a way to hold Zhou Kun back later. You should run quickly and find a good place to hide. Don't let them find you, understand?" Ji Wu transmitted his voice to Ji Yun as if he was coaxing a child. At this moment, they could only stake everything on this method. Although the success rate of this method was very low, they still had to try. "I'm here to help you, why are you making me run? You'll lose a lot of face like this." Ji Yun said unhappily. Hiding was one thing, but backing out at the last minute was another. Furthermore, running away in front of the Zhou family made him feel extremely uncomfortable. "Young master, how can you be so calculative now? Staying alive is the most important thing, be good. When we start fighting, you should run immediately." Ji Wu continued to coax Ji Yun. Although he was helpless against Ji Yun's stubbornness, he still had to coax him away. "No need to run, I have help." A faint smile appeared on Ji Yun's lips as he confidently replied. "Where did he get help from?" Ji Wu was astonished. "I met her here. We've always been traveling together." Ji Yun transmitted his voice to Ji Wu in a somewhat tsundere manner. "Is he reliable?" Ji Wu was a bit worried. He knew very well how reclusive Ji Yun was, but he didn't expect that Ji Yun would actually make friends here. "Don't worry, I'm absolutely reliable," Ji Yun solemnly promised. "Will he be willing to help us? If he helps us, he will offend the Zhou family, and the Zhou family will not let him off." Ji Wu asked worriedly. He wasn't as open-minded as Ji Yun. Although the Zhou family couldn't be compared to the 8 great divine regions, it was still one of the top powers among the many top powers. Anyone who came to participate in the elite competition had their own family. It was very difficult for others to be willing to offend another family for the sake of another family. Unless the two families were in an alliance, who would be willing to help you so easily? Other than that, once he owed someone a favor here, he would have to pay a huge price to pay it back. Therefore, unless he had no other choice, he was not willing to ask for help. "Don't worry, she'll definitely be willing to help us. Although she looks a little fierce, after getting along with her for a few days, I know that she's just a person with a sharp mouth but a soft heart. She won't leave us in the lurch," Ji Yun said with absolute certainty. Seeing how confident Ji Yun was, Ji Woo didn't think much of the friend he spoke of. However, he didn't want to pour cold water on Ji Yun's head for fear of hurting his self-esteem. So, he could only suppress the thoughts in his heart and not attack him. Seeing that Ji Woo didn't seem to believe him, Ji Yun decided to go all out and shout at the top of his voice, "Ruoshue! Someone is bullying me!" Woo! Seeing Ji Yun's reaction, Ji Woo and Ji Tao's foreheads couldn't help but be filled with black lines. How could this be possible? Would that person be angry? If it were them, they would definitely regret befriending Ji Yun. Fortunately, they were already used to it. At this moment, Lung Ruoshue, who was hiding behind a tree and watching the commotion, heard Ji Yun calling out to her. She was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. Damn it, previously he refused to come here no matter what. Now, he's calling out to me at the top of his voice. What the hell is going on? Lung Ruoshue, who was a little angry, made up her mind that she could not go out like this. Thus, she ignored Ji Yun's cry. "Oh, you actually have a helper. I really couldn't tell that you had this kind of ability." Zhou Kuan, who heard Ji Yun's shout, did not get angry, which was rare. He did not attack either. Instead, he started teasing him. However, seeing that the person Ji Yun called out to did not respond for a long time, Zhou Kuan sneered and said, "It seems that your gang is quite timid, like a tortoise who doesn't dare to show his head. You're the coward. Your whole family is a coward." Upon hearing that Zhou Kuan had the audacity to scold Ruoshue, Ji Yun was immediately enraged. What? A coward actually dared to curse. Is the sky going to rain red? Upon hearing Ji Yun's scolding, Zhou Kuan laughed instead of getting angry. Seeing how angry Ji Yun was, Ji Woo and Ji Tao widened their eyes in disbelief. This was truly too rare. "So what if I scold you? I'm going to beat you up." Ji Yun shouted. He was furious, and the consequences would be severe. Zhou Kuan and the others, as well as Ji Woo and Ji Tao, were all stunned. They looked at Ji Yun in disbelief. "What are you looking at? I'm talking about you." Ji Yun pointed at Zhou Kuan and reprimanded him in an unusual manner. "Coward! Alright. Your temper is rising." Zhou Kuan chuckled with a faint smile and looked at Ji Yun with an unfriendly gaze. After he finished speaking, he approached Ji Yun step by step. Seeing this, Ji Yun's face was filled with fear as he shouted, "What do you want to do? I'm warning you, don't you dare mess around. Otherwise, my comrades will not let you off." He had once again used Lung Ruoshue as a shield. When Lung Ruoshue, who was behind the tree, heard his words, she felt like strangling him. Chapter 1843, You Have to Protect Me, 3, That Damn Ji Yun. Lung Ruoshue secretly gritted her teeth and added another crime to Ji Yun's name. Ji Woo and Ji Tao, who were standing guard beside Ji Yun, did not know whether to laugh or cry when they heard that Ji Yun had actually ignored their existence and directly threatened Zhou Kuan with the companion that he had never met before. Although the two of them were not as powerful as Zhou Kuan, they were still much stronger than the other two people around Zhou Kuan, right? How could Ji Yun so blatantly ignore the two of them? This caused the two of them to feel extremely disgruntled. Now, they were even more curious about the companions that Ji Yun spoke of. "Oh really? Why don't you ask him to come out? I'd like to see who would have the guts to go against our Zhou family so openly." Ji Yun's words made Zhou Kuan feel even more smug. Moreover, he was very certain that Ji Yun was lying to him. The person he mentioned was not there at all. Otherwise, why had that person not appeared all this while? "Ruoshue, help me. Someone is bullying me." Zhou Kun's words made Ji Yun scream again. This time, his voice was even more hoarse and exhausted than the previous time. It sounded as if he had really been tortured miserably by someone. Unfortunately, he was now unscathed, and Zhou Kuan teased him like he was teasing a clown. When she heard Ji Yun's shouts, Lung Ruoshue could no longer bear it and walked out from behind the tree. She could tell that if she was not called out, Ji Yun would definitely not let this matter rest. The moment Lung Ruoshue came out, Ji Yun looked as if he had seen his savior. His face was full of grievance and his clear eyes were filled with tears. He pitifully ran to Lung Ruoshue, wanting to throw himself into her arms and cry. Unfortunately, Lung Ruoshue nimbly dodged him. Furthermore, When he wanted to pounce on Lung Ruoxue again, he unfortunately caught a glimpse of Lung Ruoxue's warning gaze. He could only change his pounce to a pull, and the first thing he did was naturally Lung Ruoxue's sleeve. When Lung Ruoxue saw Ji Yun's pitiful look, more and more black lines appeared on her forehead. Her beautiful face turned even uglier. She heaved a heavy sigh. She sighed in her heart. Did he have to be so exaggerated? She didn't even touch a single strand of his hair, all right? Although she had said some words to provoke him, Ji Yun didn't seem to be too angry. It seemed like he was already used to it. However, Ji Yun's current state, Lung Ruoxue didn't know what to say. She sized up Ji Yun with a hint of surprise on her face. Was this the Ji Yun who had promised to protect her? Why did he ask her to protect him instead? Ruoxue, don't look at me like that. You'll be shy. Seeing Lung Ruoxue's eyes fixed on him, Ji Yun said softly. His handsome face was also dyed with a faint pink. Lung Ruoxue was speechless. After a long while, she said, "Then you can slowly be shy. Ruoxue, now is not the time to be shy. Someone is going to bully me. You have to protect me." Ji Yun pitifully replied after hearing Lung Ruoxue's words. "I remember you said you would protect me." Lung Ruoxue reminded him with a calm tone. "Of course I will protect you, but you have to protect me first. They're too fierce, I'm scared." Ji Yun emphasized as he looked at Lung Ruoxue expectantly. His eyes were as bright as obsidian and as clear as a puppy trying to please its master. He was innocent and pure. "I'm afraid too, what should I do?" Lung Ruoxue looked at Ji Yun with an innocent expression. "Ha! Beauty, don't be afraid. I won't hurt you. Although you're Ji Yun's friend, I, Master Kuan, have always known to have tender and protective feelings for women. Don't worry. I'll love you well." Before Ji Yun could answer Lung Ruoxue's question, Zhou Kuan interrupted impatiently. This beauty was really too beautiful, so beautiful that it was unbelievable. She was so beautiful that even the flowers that were competing for beauty lost their color. Compared to the beauty in front of him, Ji Min and the others had long been thrown to the back of his mind. Originally, he wanted to get Ji Min because she was pretty and her family background was good enough for him. However, now that he had met Lung Ruoxue, Ji Min no longer piqued his interest. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue was the only person in Zhou Kun's heart and eyes. Not only Zhou Kun, but Ji Wu and Ji Tao's eyes also lit up the moment they saw Lung Ruoxue. They were stunned. However, they were puzzled as to how Ji Yun had gotten to know such a beautiful woman. His luck was indeed invincible. "What if I say that I don't need your love?" Lung Ruoxue smiled faintly, like a flower in spring that bloomed, almost blinding everyone's eyes. "Women, it's your honor that our young Master Kuan has taken a liking to you. If you know what's good for you, then obediently come into our young Master Kun's arms and be his concubine. I guarantee that you'll live a good life." Without waiting for Zhou Kun's reaction, one of his lackeys started reprimanding Lung Ruoxue in an attempt to please her. Moreover, he even arranged an identity for her and made her Zhou Kun's concubine. Idiot! How could such a beautiful young lady be a concubine? No matter what, she should be an equal wife. Zhou Kun was very displeased with the lackey's words. At the same time, he was also afraid that Lung Ruoxue would be angry. After all, as long as a woman was beautiful, unless they had no other choice, they would not be willing to be someone else's concubine. More importantly, the participants who were able to participate in the elite competition all had their own families. What if they made a fool of themselves by saying such words before they had even figured out Lung Ruoxue's background? Following that, he smiled and fawned over Lung Ruoxue. He. "Miss, please don't listen to his nonsense. He's stupid. You don't know how to speak, so please forgive me if I've offended you." Zhou Kun pretended to be a gentleman, a model of an elegant and graceful young master. However, Ji Wu and Ji Tao scoffed at his pretense. "Why are you acting? Can you still put on an act? This is what you're good at," Ji Tao said with a smile. It seemed that Zhou Kun had taken a liking to this woman. In fact, this was also good. At least, in this way, he would not have any ideas about Sister Min. However, it seemed that he would be letting down the lady who had been dragged into the water by Ji Yun. You shut up. This is a matter between me and this young lady, and it has nothing to do with your Ji family. You can stand aside. Zhou Kuan roared at Ji Tao furiously. He regretted not killing the three of them just now. If that was the case, there wouldn't be an eyesore between him and Leng Ruoxue. This young lady is our young master's friend. How could she not be related to our Ji family? Ji Wu reminded with a smile. Killing you guys will have nothing to do with you. A hint of ruthlessness flashed in Zhou Kun's eyes as he said fiercely. If you have the ability, then kill me. Ji Tao said unhappily. Anyway, it was already like this. As the saying goes, a dead pig is not afraid of boiling water, so they really were not afraid. Don't think that I won't dare to kill you. Zhou Kuan narrowed his eyes and said coldly. You come and kill me. Who's afraid of you? Ji Tao taunted. It was allowed to kill people here. If the other party dared to kill them, he would naturally have to be aware that he would be killed by others. Moreover, the Ji family was not the only enemy of the Zhou family. Are you guys done quarreling? At this moment, Leng Ruoxue, who had been neglected, asked speechlessly as she watched the two groups of people quarreling in full swing. She really had to hand it to these people. They did not even ask for her opinion and just started quarreling on their own. Furthermore, they took it for granted. We're not quarreling, we're just trying to reason. Upon hearing that Leng Ruoxue seemed to be a little displeased, Zhou Kun quickly smiled and said gently. When Leng Ruoxue heard these words, she could not help but wipe the cold sweat off her forehead. She thought to herself, this fellow is actually being reasonable now? Could it be that he wanted to follow in Ji Yun's footsteps? She sized Zhou Kun up carefully. Although he looked decent, he did not have Ji Yun's innate potential to be the submissive one. The expression on his face was a little fierce, making it difficult for people to pity him. She concluded. It would be strange if they didn't quarrel. We were fighting just now, and we almost lost our lives. Ji Tao exposed Zhou Kun's lie rudely. He was not a member of the Zhou family, so he naturally did not have to give Zhou Kun any face. Moreover, this young lady was not a fool. She would not lie to him. I saw it. Leng Ruoxue nodded affirmatively. After hearing Leng Ruoxue's words, Zhou Kun naturally could not deny it and could only look at her awkwardly with a silly smile. Then Leng Ruoxue changed the topic and said, Did you just say that you want me to be your equal wife? When she heard this before, she wanted to express her opinion, but unfortunately, he didn't give her a chance. Now that the initiative was in her hands, she had to ask. A common wife is also a concubine. Ji Tao looked at Zhou Kun with a faint smile and reminded him. Seeing that Ji Tao had ruined his plan, Zhou Kun gritted his teeth in hatred. However, in order to leave a good impression on Leng Ruoxue, he held back his anger. After he got this beauty, he would settle the score with the three Ji family members. Zhou Kun's wishful thinking was pretty good, but unfortunately, Leng Ruoxue would never let him have his way. After hearing Ji Tao's words, Leng Ruoxue nodded in agreement. That's right, although your idea is acceptable, it's a pity that it's a bit whimsical to think about me. This young miss will not be someone's equal wife, and will not be someone's concubine, so you should give up on that idea. Leng Ruoxue's words made Zhou Kun's two lackeys feel a little embarrassed and angry. However, before the two of them could flare up, they were stopped by Zhou Kun's gaze. Chapter 1844. You can only leave with me. 1. Although Zhou Kun also hated Leng Ruoxue's words, she was the woman he had taken a fancy to. Apart from him, he would not allow anyone else to criticize his woman. Moreover, he had yet to enter the bowtie's eyes, so he naturally could not let the beauty hate him. Therefore, even if he hated Leng Ruoxue for not knowing how to appreciate his kindness, it was not the time to be a man. The most important thing now was to win the bowtie's heart. After he got this beauty, he would teach her the rules. He could only endure it for now. At the thought of this, he suppressed the hatred in his heart and smiled at Leng Ruoxue. Young Lattice's words are reasonable. I was rude. May I know young Lattice's name? And which clan did he belong to? This one is willing to send someone to formally propose marriage and take young miss as my main wife. After Zhou Kun said that, he was secretly pleased with himself. He knew that there was a lot of information contained in his words, and once the other party answered him, he would be clear about her name, family, location, and other information. As for whether he would marry the beauty as his wife, it was not up to him alone. If the Bowtie's family background was comparable to his, it would naturally be no problem for him to marry her as his wife. Otherwise, he could only say that he was sorry and give her an equal wife at most. However, this could only be his own wishful thinking. Who asked him to only think about what he would do when the time came and not what Lung Ruoxue would do. Putting aside the fact that Lung Ruoxue would never agree to his request, even if she did, he would not be able to marry her. My surname is Lung. As for the marriage proposal, there's no need for it. I already have a fiancé. After hearing Zhou Kun's words, Lung Ruoxue was speechless for a long time before she said, "You have a fiancé? Who is it?" Upon hearing that, Zhou Kun was instantly infuriated. How could the woman he had his eyes on belong to someone else? He would never allow this to happen. The woman in front of him had been his possession since the first time he saw her. Now, he heard her say that she was taken. This was a fact that he could not accept. "Who's related to you?" Lung Ruoxue asked in surprise. Her beautiful face was still filled with confusion. "Of course it's related. You're the woman I like, how can you have a fiancé? I'm the only man you can have. I've decided, I'm going to fight him one-on-one. Tell him to come to me." Zhou Kun didn't want to lose and issued the challenge first. When Lung Ruoxue heard Zhou Kun's unreasonable and self-righteous words, she was speechless and did not know what to say. Why is this fellow so? He seemed to be even weirder than Ji Yun. He didn't even understand the monster situation and wanted to challenge the monster one-on-one. Wasn't this courting death? Moreover, she was very sure that if Zhou Kun really dared to come to her door, the demon would definitely not let him have an easy time. What's wrong? You don't dare to tell me? Was he afraid that his brother would beat him up? Don't worry, for your sake, I'll let him live, but the two of you must never see each other again. Otherwise, if I find out, I won't let you two go. Seeing that Lung Ruoxue did not respond for a long time, Zhou Kun thought that she was afraid. Hence, he continued to pursue the matter. This time, Lung Ruoxue was even more speechless. She didn't know how to describe her current feelings. In short, it was hard to describe them in a few words. He did not expect that he would encounter such a rare talent one after another in the few days he had been here. Moreover, Zhou Kun seemed to be even better than Ji Yun. At least, Ji Yun was not annoying, but Zhou Kun was a completely different person. Lung Ruoxue remained silent, but Ji Tao, who was not far away, could not help but burst into laughter after hearing Zhou Kun's words. "Ha! Toad from the Zhou family, I really have to give it to you. Is there anyone as self-righteous as you? Nothing happened? Who do you think you are to let her cut off all contact with her fiancé? Don't tell me that all the women in the world like you? If that's what you're thinking, then I suggest you commit suicide and reincarnate as a top-grade crystal. I believe that everyone will like you then." The more Ji Tao spoke, the more he felt that his words made sense, and he laughed even more wantonly. As for Zhou Kun, after hearing Ji Tao's ridicule, he was so angry that his face turned red and white. The veins on his forehead were throbbing, and there was a faint flame dancing in the depths of his eyes. That damned Ji Tao. She actually dared to humiliate him like this. Uncle can tolerate it, but Aunt can't. Zhou Kun was filled with hatred in his heart. He clenched his fists tightly, but he was thinking about whether he should teach Ji Tao a lesson. Teach him a lesson. At the same time, he was afraid that Lung Ruoxue would have a bad impression of him, as though he was a bully who relied on his strength. However, he was going to let Ji Tao off just like that? He felt indignant. He was so conflicted. "Miss Lung, I'm very sincere towards you." After enduring silently for a long while, Zhou Kun decided to let Ji Tao off first. His main priority was to capture Lung Ruoxue. As for the 3G family's boys, they would not be able to escape sooner or later. However, it would be a grave sin to scare the beauty away. Moreover, the beauty had a fiancé of unknown origins who was his greatest enemy. At this moment, he had already treated the demon as his love rival, but the demon was still unaware of it. Thank you for your sincerity, but am really not interested in you. Lung Ruoxue sighed and said straightforwardly, Woman, you're really asking for it the hard way. Our young Master Kun has already said so, and you're still trying to be arrogant? Seeing that Zhou Kun couldn't handle the woman, one of his lackeys couldn't help but roar. He really felt bad for young Master Kun. When had young Master Kun ever been so submissive to a woman? This woman really doesn't know what's good for her. To think that young Master Kun still indulges her so much. To be honest, even I can't bear to watch this anymore. So what if she was beautiful? There were many beautiful women in the divine realm. Even though this woman was prettier than the average woman, young Master Kun was not lacking in women. Hence, he could not understand why young Master Kun was so forgiving towards this woman. After all, if it was any other woman who dared to treat young Master Kun like this, young Master Kun would have already thought of a way to deal with her. If he could not deal with her, he would have to first ruin her reputation. Otherwise, it would be difficult to vent his hatred. AI. Why doesn't anyone believe the truth these days? Lung Ruoxue mumbled to herself with an aggrieved expression after hearing the lackey's words. Poochie! A soft chuckle was heard. Then, the owner of the chuckle, Jiyun, said with a fawning expression, Ruoxue, I believe you. Be good. Lung Ruoxue helplessly patted Jiyun's head and coaxed him. Jiyun, who was being patted on the head, squinted his eyes in enjoyment, looking more and more like a little beast. Damn it, who allowed you to touch him? Just as Lung Ruoxue and Jiyun were enjoying each other's caresses, an earth-shattering roar resounded through the air. Following which, Lung Ruoxue saw a fellow who was so angry that his entire body was on fire. He glared fiercely at her hand that was gently caressing Jiyun's head. Jiyun, on the other hand, shivered and quickly hid behind Lung Ruoxue in fear. Ruoxue, protect me, Jiyun fearfully said, the expression on his handsome little face growing more and more frightened. Chapter 1845. You can only come with me, too, AI. Lung Ruoxue could only sigh when she saw Jiyun running away faster than a rabbit. Actually, she really wanted to say, kiss. You're a man. Damn it. What kind of man is he if he hides behind a woman? Is this all you're capable of as the young master of the Ji family? I really don't understand why those old fogies of the Ji family would let you be the young master. Aren't they afraid that you'll destroy the Ji family? Zhou Kun, who was furious, said in exasperation. He really didn't know what the Ji family's judgment was. They actually chose a coward to be the young master. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but feel sour in his heart. What does that have to do with you? Our Ji family is willing to let Jiyun be the young master. What can you do? Go and catch rats elsewhere. We have cats in the Ji family, we don't need you. Upon hearing Zhou Kun's words, Ji Tao said in an unpleasant tone, Hee hee. After listening to Ji Tao's words, Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but laugh. This member of the Ji family was quite interesting. He actually said that Zhou Kun was a busybody. However, Zhou Kun was indeed a busybody. When he saw Lung Ruoxue laughing, Zhou Kun, who was about to get angry, was immediately silenced by her beautiful smile. He could only look at Lung Ruoxue in a daze. At this moment, Jiyun and Ji Tao were nothing in his eyes. His eyes that were spitting fire only had Lung Ruoxue's smile. Ruoxue, he seems to be a little silly. Jiyun, who was hiding behind Lung Ruoxue, could not help but whisper when he saw that Zhou Kun, who was still furious a moment ago, was now standing still and smiling foolishly. You're the one who's stupid. Lung Ruoxue lightly patted Jiyun's head, her beautiful face filled with helplessness. I'm not stupid. Lung Ruoxue's words made Jiyun so aggrieved that he was on the verge of tears. Tears welled up in his clear eyes as he looked at Lung Ruoxue pitifully. They'll teach you a lesson if you dare to cry. Lung Ruoxue shot a glance at Jiyun as she warned him. I don't want to cry. I can't help it. You're bullying me. Woo, Jiyun sobbed. Tears welled up in his eyes, but they refused to fall. When did I bully you? Lung Ruoxue gritted her teeth and asked. Why did this fellow like to say that others bullied him so much? Could it be that he had a face that attracted hatred? You said I'm stupid, but you won't let me cry. Ji-yoon's mouth twitched. He felt extremely wronged. Hearing Ji-yoon's words, Lung Ruoshue couldn't help but wipe away the cold sweat on her forehead. She then sneaked a glance at Ji-woo and Ji-tao. However, she saw that the two of them were as calm as ever, as if they were used to it. She immediately felt that she was making a big fuss out of nothing. She should have known about Ji-yoon's character long ago, right? Why bother with him? AI. She realized that the number of sighs she had made in the past few days was more than the number of sighs she had made in a year. Alright, you're not stupid. Cry if you want to. Lung Ruoshue said helplessly. Ruoshue, you're the best. Ji-yoon was as happy as a child who had received candy. Be good. Go play by the side, I have some serious business to discuss with them. Lung Ruoshue coaxed Ji-yoon as she pointed at Ji-woo and Ji-tao. What business? Can I listen? Actually, I can give you guys some advice. When Ji-yoon heard that he had been excluded, he said dejectedly. He also wanted to participate in the official business. Serious business is boring. You won't like it. Go play by the side. Good girl. Be good and I'll give you some candy later. Lung Ruoshue was now completely treating Ji-yoon as a little child. Then you have to give me lots and lots of candy. Otherwise, I'll stay here. Ji-yoon started to talk about his conditions. Recently, Ruoshue had been using candy to coax him, and he really liked the candy. No problem. Lung Ruoshue nodded in agreement. Seeing that he had achieved his goal, Ji-yoon went to the side to wait. When Ji-woo and Ji-tao saw Ji-yoon's reaction, they couldn't help but twitch their lips. What kind of situation was this? When did Ji-yoon become so easy to talk to? A few pieces of candy? It must be known that although Ji-yoon looked silly and innocent, he was publicly acknowledged as the smartest member of the Ji clan. But now, what had Ji-yoon done? The beauty only gave him a few pieces of candy and he was coaxed to the side. This was too embarrassing. However, they believed that Ji-yoon had his own reasons for doing so. Out of their trust in Ji-yoon, they naturally did not ask too much less interfere with Ji-yoon's thoughts and decisions. After sending Ji-yoon away, Lung Ruoshue walked towards Ji-tao and Ji-woo without a change in her expression and said softly, "What are you going to do? Should we continue fighting them, or temporarily stop? If we fight, I'm afraid we're not their match right now. Moreover, we're injured. But will they agree to stop temporarily?" Ji-woo calmly pondered for a moment before saying, "In fact, it's best not to fight now. After all, although the Ji and Zhou families have a grudge, it's all on the surface. After leaving this place, it won't be too late to settle the score between them. But this place is different. There are many unknown factors here. Moreover, we've only been here for less than 10 days. If we lose our men now, what will we do for the remaining days?" Of course, this was only his own thoughts. The Zhou family might not think the same as him. We'll know if we ask. Lung Ruoshue smiled as she reminded him. If we ask, he definitely won't agree. Ji-woo said helplessly. He then looked at Lung Ruoshue with anticipation. When Lung Ruoshue saw this, she wiped the cold sweat off her forehead. She could tell that the Ji family was using her as free labor. But forget it. For the sake of Ji-yoon, she would not argue with them. After thinking about it, Lung Ruoshue turned around and walked to Zhou Kun's side. She said, "Young Master Zhou, can we temporarily stop the battle? If you want to fight, you can do it outside. Ceasefire? Alright. However, I have a condition." Upon hearing Lung Ruoshue's words, Zhou Kun suddenly snapped back to reality. He looked at Lung Ruoshue, who was so close to him, and his heart itched even more. Beautiful. She's so beautiful. This is a true beauty. After meeting Lung Ruoshue, he deeply felt that all the so-called beauties he had seen in the past had all become ordinary and not worth mentioning. What condition? Lung Ruoshue frowned and asked. You have to tell me who your fiancé is, and let him fight me one-on-one. If I win, you'll be mine. Zhou Kun boasted shamelessly. When they heard his conditions, Ji-woo and Ji-tao were furious. This was clearly taking advantage of him. In fact, they were not afraid of Zhou Kun and the others. They just felt that it was more important to preserve their strength for the time being. After all, the two families had been enemies for a long time, and there was no need to fight to the death here. Wouldn't that benefit others? However, before the two of them could reject Zhou Kun's conditions, Leng Ruoxue agreed first. No problem. But what if you lose? Leng Ruoxue couldn't help but ask. In her heart, she was thinking, if this evildoer knew that someone had designs on her, he would probably want to beat them up, right? Now that this person had taken the initiative to come to her door, if she didn't take it on behalf of the demon might drink it up in jealousy after finding out. Chapter 1846. You can only leave with me. 3. This young master won't lose. Zhou Kun said confidently. All right then. Apart from being speechless, Leng Ruoxue felt a sense of powerlessness. She really could not understand where this person got his confidence from. Zhou Kun, although you're very confident, I think it's better to say the ugly words first. What are you going to do if you lose? Ji Tao couldn't bear to see Zhou Kun's smug look, so he said, hoping that the world would be in chaos. I said I won't lose. You don't understand what I'm saying, right? Ji Tao's words made Zhou Kun furious. Why is Ji Tao so annoying? He was everywhere. Let's not talk about losing first. The key is that if you lose, you'll have to pay a price, right? After all, if he lost, he would have to give up his fiancée. With such a huge price, it didn't seem right if he didn't come up with something decent, right? Don't think that your Zhou family can use your power to bully others. We all saw it. Ji Tao provoked. If this lord loses, this lord's life will be given to him. That should be fine, right? Zhou Kun couldn't help but be agitated and said angrily. You don't have any proof. What if you lose and go back on your word? Ji Tao said with a worried look. I said I won't go back on my word, so I won't go back on my word. Zhou Kun gritted his teeth and said with hatred in his heart. Ji Tao is really despicable. Why don't you write a receipt? Leng Ruoxue suggested with a smile. Even you don't believe me? Zhou Kun said with a bitter face and an aggrieved expression. Should I believe you? I don't even know you. Leng Ruoxue asked in surprise. From his tone, it sounded like he was acting coquettishly. Leng Ruoxue shuddered and quickly threw this thought out of her mind. Zhou Kun was so angry that he was at a loss for words. After a long while, he gritted his teeth and said, Good. They'll write an agreement. You can't write a written pledge. That thing's binding power is too low. You should just make an oath. Ji Tao reminded. Zhou Kun's face turned livid with anger after hearing Ji Tao's words. She actually wanted him to make an oath? Could that thing be casually distributed? Although Zhou Kun had just promised to hand his life over to the other party if he lost, he was extremely unwilling to make him swear an oath. This was also for the sake of prevention. After all, they were from aristocratic families and knew what they could and couldn't do. However, seeing that Leng Ruoxue seemed to agree with this idea, Zhou Kun felt that he was in a difficult position. If he were to reject her, he was afraid that Leng Ruoxue would dislike him even more. Forget it, let's not make things difficult for young Master Zhou. Oaths really can't be made randomly. Let's just write a receipt. After a long while, Leng Ruoxue said in an understanding manner when she saw Zhou Kun's constipated look. In fact, she was thinking that with Zhou Kun's devilish behavior, the success rate of him reneging on his debt would not be high. Therefore, she was not afraid that Zhou Kun would have any other thoughts. The top priority was to stabilize Zhou Kun first. In fact, if they were to really fight, she was really not afraid of Zhou Kun. However, she did not want to appear too outrageous. After all, their every move could be seen clearly by the outside world. She did not want to expose all her trump cards to the eyes of others. Therefore, unless she had no other choice, she did not want to make a move easily. If she really did make a move, she would definitely hide her strength. I'll write you an IOU. Leng Ruoxue's words made Zhou Kun feel more at ease. He was still thinking to himself happily, it seems that the beauty is not completely indifferent to me. She was so considerate to him. Fortunately, Leng Ruoxue was unaware of Zhou Kun's thoughts. Otherwise, she would have been depressed to death. She was not being considerate towards Zhou Kun, but she felt that there was no need to do so. After all, it was impossible for Zhou Kun to renege on his debt. Zhou Kun wrote the IOU very quickly. After he was done, he immediately handed it to Leng Ruoxue. Then he stared at her without taking his eyes off her, and he was daydreaming in his heart. As long as he thought about how this unparalleled beauty was about to belong to him, his heart was so beautiful that it was about to float up. Leng Ruoxue ignored Zhou Kun's slightly perverted gaze and suppressed the disgust in her heart as she reminded him, "Young Master Zhou, since I've already agreed to your conditions, you must put aside your grudges with the Ji family for the time being. You must not find any reason or excuse to cause trouble for the Ji family here. Can you do that?" "Sure, as long as they don't come looking for trouble with me, I can let them off for the time being on your account." Zhou Kun promised. The reason he said that was to let Leng Ruoxue know that he was giving her face. Otherwise, how could he possibly let those brats of the Ji family off? "Don't worry, they won't take the initiative to find trouble with you. We'll leave this place in a while," Leng Ruoxue said indifferently. As soon as Zhou Kun heard that Leng Ruoxue was leaving, he was immediately displeased. The reason why he did not cause trouble for the Ji family was because of Leng Ruoxue. If Leng Ruoxue left with the 3 boys from the Ji family, what would he do? At the thought of this, Zhou Kun immediately said loudly, "No. You can't leave this place. You have to stay with us." As for the 3 members of the Ji family, they could go wherever they wanted. He didn't care. On what basis? Leng Ruoxue raised her brows and asked in surprise. "On the basis that you are..." Zhou Kun was about to say that she was his woman, but on second thought, Leng Ruoxue was not even his yet. If he said this now, it would be bad if the beauty got angry. Thus, he swallowed the words "my woman." "We've just reached an agreement. If you leave with them, where am I going to find your fiancé for a one-on-one fight? So, you can't leave. You can only come with me." The more Zhou Kun thought about it, the more he felt that his idea was good. In that case, he would also have the opportunity to prove to the beauty that he was good. "All right then," Leng Ruoxue replied. Then, she looked at Ji Yun and the other 2 and said, "Let's go with the Zhou family for the time being. At least we can take care of each other. I'll go wherever Ruoxue goes." Ji Yun hurriedly said with an ingratiating expression. His little appearance made him look extremely obedient. "We don't have any objections." Ji Wu and Ji Tao also looked at each other and saw a hint of a smile in each other's eyes, because they knew that Zhou Kun would definitely be depressed if the 3 of them followed him. "Young Master Zhou, let's go," Leng Ruoxue said to Zhou Kun with a faint smile after getting the approval of Ji Yun and the other 2. "Let's go." Zhou Kun did not expect that the outcome would be like this. He gritted his teeth and braced himself. After he finished speaking, he did not even turn his head back and walked in front angrily. Leng Ruoxue and the others saw this and followed behind him slowly. At this moment, the audience in the stadium saw the scene on the screen and their eyes widened in disbelief. What was going on? Did they see wrongly? Shouldn't the people inside start fighting as soon as they meet? The scene that they had thought would be an intense battle was over just like that? Everyone felt an unspeakable disappointment in their hearts, especially the families that also had a feud with the Zhou family. They didn't see the fierce battle between the Ji and Zhou families, and they were all unwilling to accept it. However, what could they do if the other party didn't want to fight? However, when the patriarchs of the Ji and Zhou families saw this scene, they were quite satisfied with their way of dealing with it. After all, the enmity between the 2 families could be completely resolved outside. There was no need to fight to the point where both sides suffered losses and let others benefit from it. That would be a great loss. Wow. This girl is actually using her beauty as a trap. Sitting in the Ning family's exclusive seat, the chief elder of the Craftsmen's Guild saw the situation on the light screen and couldn't help but click his tongue. The expression on his face was as if he had seen some rare wonder. "What's wrong with your eyes? Did this girl even need to use a honey trap? As long as she stands there, she will have thousands of admirers who will be willing to follow her orders. Do you understand?" The master of the Ning family said with dissatisfaction, but he snorted coldly in his heart. Was there a need to use a honey trap to deal with the Zhou family's kid? That guy was a lecherous person to begin with. Don't be fooled by his appearance. In fact, he was full of tricks. Initially, he didn't know Zhou Kun. However, ever since Lung Ruoxue met Zhou Kun and the others face to face, he had specially sent someone to investigate Zhou Kun's past. After finding out about it, he couldn't help but worry for Shui. After all, Zhou Kun was not a good person. As long as the woman he fancied submitted to him, it would be fine. If they did not, he would use any means possible. At the very least, his reputation would be ruined. At the very worst, he might even lose his life. Although this was the immortal realm, a woman's reputation was equally important. If a woman's good reputation was gone, the clan would feel ashamed. In worse cases, they might even expel her from the clan. After all, such a woman did not even have the qualifications to be a chess piece. Compared to his life, Master Ning felt that the act of ruining his reputation was more abominable. After all, if he lost his life, he would be done for and would not know any pain. However, for a woman with a bad reputation, unless she had the protection of her family or she was strong enough, otherwise, living would be their greatest pain. Right. I said the wrong thing. Our girl's charm is boundless. Those ordinary people can't resist it, hee. The great elder agreed with Master Ning's words without any backbone. What could he do? This old man's mood had been very unstable recently, so he had to coax him a little. He couldn't make him angry, otherwise, he would be the only one who would suffer. Chapter 1847. Ji-Yun in Sheep's Clothing 1. You're tactful. The master of the Ning family rolled his eyes at the great elder and said with a tsundere tone, Hee. Hearing their conversation, Uncle Long couldn't help but chuckle. These two old men weren't young anymore, but they were still acting like children. Was there any point in bickering over this? He couldn't understand the way they got along. Perhaps this was the so-called generation gap. Uncle Long, do you think that Zhou Kun will harm the little girl? He's not a good person. The great elder smiled at Uncle Long and asked for his advice. His attitude was extremely affable. He dares? If he dares to touch a single hair on this little girl, he'll make sure his entire family is buried with her. Uncle Long's pitch-black eyes glowed with ruthlessness as he spoke in a vicious tone. Uncle Long, you're so imposing. The first elder couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat on his forehead and whispered in fear. He looked at Uncle Long and actually sympathized with Zhou Kun, who was trying to hit on Shui. One had to know that that girl was not to be trifled with. Now that she had a few old fogies who were protective of her, whoever dared to mess with her would be courting death. Don't be afraid. As long as you're obedient, I won't beat you up. Uncle Long said to the great elder with a faint smile. After hearing Uncle Long's words, the great elder was a little depressed. What did he mean by as long as he was obedient? Did Uncle Long think he was a 3-year-old child? He had lived for so long and had never been coaxed like a child before. It was a new and interesting feeling. Ning family's boy, you be good too. Glancing at the depressed first elder, Uncle Long said to the master of the Ning family, but he thought to himself that since they had been good friends for many years, as an elder, he had to be impartial. Otherwise, if he only reminded one and not the other, it would definitely make them feel different, and it would make them feel unbalanced. Sure enough, hearing Uncle Long mention the old man of the Ning family, first elder felt much better. It felt weird to be coaxed like a warning. However, they were only able to calm down after hearing Uncle Long's words. If it was anyone else who dared to speak to them in such a manner, they would definitely end up in a miserable state. However, Master Ning was even more upset. Uncle Long, am I not obedient enough? Uncle Long's words made the master of the Ning family very depressed. This was really unreasonable. He had only warned the first elder. How could he be implicated? Just barely. Uncle Long said, seemingly dissatisfied. The master of the Ning family was even more depressed, and when the great elder saw this, he couldn't help but laugh in his heart. All right, stop discussing. Focus on the match. Uncle Long yawned and then closed his eyes to take a nap. The master of the Ning family and the first elder had to shut their mouths and look at the screen. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue and the others, who were in the special space, had no idea that they had become the focus of discussion. Leng Ruoxue was in a terrible fix. The Ji and Zhou families were too much of a troublemaker. There were 6 people in total, but no matter what they did, as long as one side agreed, the other side would definitely object to it. Now, the 2 sides were arguing about what to eat for dinner. And this was only their first day together. They still had to stay here for another 20 days. If they were like this every day, what would they do in the future? Leng Ruoxue didn't even dare to imagine. I want to eat chicken, I want to eat roast chicken. Not far away, Ji-yun craned his neck and his face was flushed red. He was fighting with Zhou Kun at the top of his voice for the right to have dinner that night. What chicken dinner? How do you know about chickens? He had long heard that the coward of the Ji family liked to eat chicken, and he would not be happy without chicken. However, he hated chicken the most, so he was determined not to eat it. So what if I like to eat chicken? Don't you like to eat stinky things? Ji-yun shouted in a bad mood. Fuck? Who told you that I like to eat stinky things? Do you want to die? Zhou Kun's expression immediately turned extremely ugly, and he secretly hated Ji-yun in his heart. Brat, how can you slander me like this in front of a beauty? Although he had a preference in that aspect, it wasn't like he liked her. Isn't this something that everyone knows? Why are you so angry? Ji-yun muttered softly. He was no longer afraid of Zhou Kun because Ruoxue would protect him. Zhou Kun was so angry with Ji-yun that he was trembling. He stretched out his fist and was about to punch him, but he was unexpectedly stopped by the 2 lackeys beside him. Why are you stopping me? I want to teach him a good lesson. Zhou Kun turned around and looked at the lackey who was blocking his way with a fierce look on his face. He then roared angrily. Young Master Kun, calm down. He's making you angry on purpose, don't fall for it. Demeanor. Did you forget that you said you would perform well in front of Miss Leng? This Ji-yun has such a good relationship with Miss Leng, so why don't you treat him as your own daughter? Since he wants to eat roast chicken, then let him eat it. It's not a big deal. One of the lackeys whispered to Zhou Kun. Young Master Kun had told them that they had to pursue Miss Leng and leave a good impression on her. Therefore, as young Master Kun's think tank, he naturally had to think for young Master Kun. He couldn't let young Master Kun make mistakes in such trivial matters. After all, such trivial matters were the most challenging. What you said makes sense. After listening to Ji-yun's words, Zhou Kun's fiery eyes immediately calmed down, and his heart calmed down a lot. However, he loathed Yun even more in his heart. That damn coward. He almost caused me to make a low-level mistake. I can't tolerate him. Then, he turned to Ji-yun and said, since you want to eat roast chicken, then eat it. However, you have to make sure the chicken is delicious, or it'll beat you up. Zhou Kun threatened. Moreover, the implication of his words was that he wanted Ji-yun to prepare dinner for the day. However, Ji-yun was exceptionally happy after listening to his words. Don't worry. I'm good at cooking, I guarantee you'll want more after you eat it. Ji-yun said in a fawning manner. After he finished speaking, he ran over to the fire that had already been lit and began to roast his fat chicken. At that moment, Ji Tao, who was helping by the fire, saw Ji-yun happily busying himself. He felt a little upset and couldn't help but say, Young master, why should we serve them? We're not servants of the Zhou family. Ji Tao felt indignant, but seeing that Ji-yun didn't have much of a reaction, he could only put his dissatisfaction to heart and concentrate on helping Ji-yun roast chicken. After all, Ji-yun couldn't be the only one busy with food for so many people, right? Ji-yun was the young master of the Ji family. Serving others makes us happy, especially when it comes to serving the enemy. This is the best way to cultivate one's body and mind. Ji-yun laughed nonchalantly. Then he took out a large pile of bottles and jars from his storage ring. In an instant, his hands moved quickly and the powder from the bottles and jars was evenly sprinkled on the already sizzling chicken. In an instant, the unique fragrance of roasted meat wafted through the air. Chapter 1848. Ji-yun in sheep's clothing. 2. Zhou Kun, who was not far away, could not help but swallow his saliva when he smelled the aroma of the roasted meat in the air. He thought to himself, I didn't expect this kid to have some skills. The chicken is so fragrant that even I, who has always hated chicken, want to have a few bites. After the chicken was roasted, Zhou Kun and the other two walked straight towards them without waiting for Ji Yun's instructions. Upon seeing that, Ji Yun quickly handed over a fat chicken with a faint smile. However, Zhou Kun ignored him and took the 3 chickens that were roasting over the fire. He ate one himself and shared the other 2 with his dog legs. Ji Yun saw that he was ignored and smiled indifferently. He continued his work as a chef to serve the people. After all, he had only roasted 4 chickens just now, and 3 of them had been eaten by Zhou Kun and the other 2. As for the other one, he naturally had to leave it for Ruoxue. As such, he, Ji Wu, and Ji Tao had nothing to eat, so they had to continue roasting. As for the chicken he had prepared for Lung Ruoxue, it was no surprise that Ruoxue had fed it to the not-so-cute little fox. However, this time, the little fox did not complain. After it finished eating the chicken, it lay comfortably in Lung Ruoxue's arms with its 4 legs up in the air. Its vigilant silver eyes sized up the few people present. The reason why it didn't return to the origin space this time was that it had accepted the task that everyone had arranged for it. It was responsible for monitoring these guys who had ill intentions towards its cute master. Zhou Kun, who had originally intended to please Lung Ruoxue, saw that Ji Yun had actually taken the initiative to hand the roast chicken to Lung Ruoxue. He was instantly burning with jealousy. However, when he saw that Lung Ruoxue not only did not eat the roast chicken that Ji Yun had given her, but had even fed the chicken to an animal, he immediately felt balanced. Not long after dinner, Zhou Kun, who was lying in his tent, suddenly felt discomfort in his stomach. He quickly stood up and ran out of the tent. My lovely master, someone's acting up. In another tent, Baby, who was lying in Lung Ruoxue's arms, heard the commotion outside and smiled evilly. You're such a gloating little rascal. Are you that happy to see Zhou Kun and the others make a fool of themselves? Lung Ruoxue caressed her baby's soft, silk-like fur as she spoke with a doting expression. Of course I'm happy. Who asked him to have ideas about cute master? He's really a toad lusting after a swan's flesh. Baby said with a look of disdain. Not everyone could plot against its master. However, it did not expect that coward Ji Yun to have such a trick up his sleeve. He had actually drugged Zhou Kun and the other 2 without anyone knowing. It seemed that one really couldn't judge a book by its cover. This was especially so for someone like Ji Yun, who looked very innocent and even a little silly. Now, it had a whole new level of respect for Ji Yun. It didn't expect that guy to also be so two-faced. Yes, he's going to suffer this time. Lung Ruoxue said with a faint smile. She had not expected Ji Yun to do this. In fact, when Ji Yun and Zhou Kun each brought a roast chicken to her, she had already felt the difference between the 2 roast chickens. Although the difference was very slight and ordinary people might not be able to sense it, as an alchemist, she was more sensitive to smells than others. Therefore she could tell at once. It was also from that moment on that she began to pay more attention to Ji Yun. Perhaps this young master of the Ji family wasn't what everyone thought he was. Cute master, should we go out and watch the show? Well, let him know that we saw his embarrassing state and save him from always unconsciously thinking about master. Any man who dares to hit my cute master must be eliminated. Baby said indignantly, and his heart was filled with hatred. It's better not to go out. Lung Ruoxue said after some thought. It would not do them any good to go out at this time. All right then. Baby was a little regretful, but he had to listen to his master. At this moment, an angry roar suddenly came from outside the tent. Damn those Ji Yun, Ji Wu, and Ji Tao. Get out here. Upon hearing this voice, Lung Ruoxue could only stand up helplessly and leave the tent with the treasure in her arms. If she were to continue closing her eyes, she was afraid that Zhou Kun would vent his anger on Ji Yun and the other 2 in a fit of anger. As he walked out of the tent, Ji Yun and the other 2 were also yawning as they walked out. Why you calling us? You guys are full of energy and don't want to sleep, but we still want to sleep. Ji Tao said in dissatisfaction. Damn it, What did you put on the roast chicken? Upon hearing Ji Tao's words, Zhou Kun's heart burned with even more anger. Originally, he wasn't interested in chicken, but because the smell of the roast chicken was too fragrant, he couldn't help but eat a little. He didn't expect that he would have diarrhea in the middle of the night. After a few rounds, his legs were weak from squatting and he almost collapsed from diarrhea. I didn't put anything? There are only some seasonings. Ji Tao couldn't help but say. Then, he looked at Zhou Kun and the other two, who were obviously pale and looked weak. He asked in puzzlement, "What's wrong with you guys? Why do you look so pale?" Although he said that out of concern, he was really happy to see Zhou Kun and the other two looking so weak. Fortunately, they were considered half-allies for the time being. Therefore, he appeared to be very concerned. "Arg, are you having diarrhea? Where did you poop it from? Don't you know that this special space is under full surveillance? I'm finished." Now, the audience is lucky enough to see your big butts. When Ji Tao heard that the other party had diarrhea, he quickly reminded him in a fuss. However, he had long laughed in his heart. Zhou Kun and the other two were extremely embarrassed. However, how did they get diarrhea? Could it be Ji Yun's doing? What a good seasoning. We all had diarrhea after eating your roast chicken. What did you put on the chicken? Zhou Kun growled at the top of his lungs in a fit of anger. "Arg, are you having diarrhea? Where did you poop it from? Don't you know that this special space is under full surveillance? I'm finished." Now, the audience is lucky enough to see your big butts. When Ji Tao heard that the other party had diarrhea, he quickly reminded him in a fuss. However, he had long laughed in his heart. Zhou Kun and the other two were extremely embarrassed. However, how did they get diarrhea? Could it be Ji Yun's doing? It's not impossible. He couldn't help but think. He knew it. How could Ji Yun, the black-bellied fellow who liked to pretend to be a pig to eat tigers, tolerate Zhou Kun and the others climbing over his head and abusing him? It turned out that he was already prepared. It must be known that there was a reason why Ji Yun was doted on by the Ji family. It was just that outsiders didn't know. However, underestimating Ji Yun would result in him suffering a great loss. This was what he had learned from his experience as a member of the Ji family. As soon as Ji Tao's words fell, Zhou Kun and the other two's faces turned even paler, because the matter was indeed as Ji Tao had said. Their embarrassing behavior when they were in a hurry just now should have been seen by the representatives of the major aristocratic families. What should they do? At that moment, Zhou Kun even felt like dying. It was not just a matter of embarrassment. It should be known that the master of this special space was the Divine Master. Now, the three of them were relieving themselves in the divine artifact that the Divine Master belonged to, and they were also seen by so many representatives of the great families. The evidence was irrefutable, and they could not deny it even if they wanted to. Once the Divine Master found out about this matter, they were afraid that they would lose their lives. All of a sudden, Zhou Kun and the other two became listless. Their bodies, which were originally a little weak due to diarrhea, were now trembling non-stop like fallen leaves in the autumn wind. Chapter 1849. Ji Yun in Sheep's Clothing 3. Young Master Kun. What do we do now? A lackey's face turned white, green, and black, like a palette that kept changing. The words he spoke trembled even more. What can we do? Hurry up and clean up. Zhou Kun gave the lackey a hard knock on the head and growled in a low voice. After saying that, he turned around and ran away, while the other two members of the Zhou family followed closely behind. When Leng Ruoxue saw this scene, her forehead was filled with black lines. It seemed like she had worried for nothing. She originally thought that Zhou Kun and the other two would be eager to tear Ji Yun and the rest into pieces. He did not expect that Zhou Kun and the others would ignore them just because of a few words from Ji Tao. However, the consequences of relieving themselves in the Divine Master's divine weapon seemed to be quite serious. At the thought of this, Leng Ruoxue couldn't help but look at the confused Ji Yun. That pitiful face was still in a daze. However, after witnessing this, she no longer thought of Ji Yun as simple and naive. That fellow was an out-and-out, vicious, and merciless wolf in sheep's clothing. Sensing Lung Ruoxu's scrutinizing gaze, Ji-yun smiled timidly and revealed an innocent expression like a little white rabbit. With a face full of fear, he said, "Ruoxu, Zhou Kuan and the others are so fierce. You scared me to death." After saying that, the mist in her clear eyes surged up again. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but roll her eyes. Continue acting. She didn't intend to expose Ji-yun. She wanted to see how long he was going to keep up the act. Ruoxue. Seeing that Lung Ruoxue didn't seem too happy, Ji-yun continued to call out to her timidly. However, Lung Ruoxue continued to ignore him. Ji-yun was helpless and could only use the same trick to run to Lung Ruoxue's side. He pulled on her sleeve and choked, "Ruoxu, you will protect me, right?" Hearing this, the baby couldn't help but roll his eyes. Don't think that it didn't know what this guy was thinking. However, this move shouldn't be of much use against his cute master, because someone else had used the same move before, and it was that evildoer. Although there were some differences in the moves, they were generally the same. Don't worry. Zhou Kuan can't be bothered to cause trouble for you now. He's in even greater trouble. Lung Ruoxu's words were a little ambiguous. She didn't say she would protect him, but she didn't say she wouldn't protect him either. However, when Ji-yun heard her words, he could tell that she was disdaining him. "Ruoxue, I can cook." He can cook so many delicious things, not just roast chicken. However, the conditions here are limited, so I can't fully display my cooking skills. I'll make it for you when I have the opportunity in the future. However, you have to protect me first. If I die here, no one will be able to cook for you in the future. Ji-yun said pitifully. After saying so much, his main purpose was to get Lung Ruoxue to protect him. "You said you would protect me." Lung Ruoxue reminded him for the umpteenth time. Her face was filled with helplessness. "You protect me first, and I'll protect your stomach and feed you until you're full every day." Ji-yun said somewhat shyly. After hearing Ji-yun's words, Lung Ruoxue was left speechless countless times. As soon as baby heard this, he immediately became spirited. "What, are you planning to cook for my lovely master every day?" This silly boy clearly had ulterior motives. "I'll take care of Ruoxue's meals from now on. I'll cook for her every day." Ji-yun hurriedly nodded. "But, my family's cute master has servant girls, and master's food is all prepared by them. If they know that you snatch their rice bowls, they will be very anxious with you. By the way, they're all very fierce." The treasure said with a hint of schadenfreude, as if it could already see Ji-yun's tragic end. "It doesn't matter. I'll get along well with them." Ji-yun promised. If he wanted to please Lung Ruoxue, he had to please the people around her first. This was what his father always said. Of course, his father's exact words were that if he wanted to please a woman, he had to first settle the people around her. This way, even if she hated you and ignored you, she wouldn't be able to withstand the praises from everyone around you. As time passed, you would naturally slowly seep into her life. It had to be said that Old Man Jis' way of thinking was similar to the way the demon pursued Lung Ruoxue. They both wanted to infiltrate the other party's life and were everywhere. If that's the case, then I'll represent my master in accepting you as an attendant. Baby waved his little paws and said with a pout, "An attendant?" Ji-yun was dumbfounded. He didn't want to be an attendant. That's right. It was an attendant. Besides, I'll have to give you a cut first before you can stay by my cute master's side. Otherwise, as long as you're a male creature, you can't stay by my master's side. Master's man is so fierce. I'll kill every extra man around master." Baby made a kahad gesture and said in a serious manner. The cut it mentioned was naturally to castrate Ji-yun. Baby's words made even more black lines appear on Lung Ruoxue's forehead. She really wanted to know who Baby had learned these things from. However, she guessed that Ji-yun and the other two wouldn't understand the meaning of the cut, and she naturally didn't intend to explain it to them. However, even if she didn't tell them, it didn't mean that their baby wouldn't tell them. He saw his precious child mysteriously smile as he looked at the obviously confused Ji-yun and the other two. He then asked, "Do you know where I'm cutting?" When Ji Yun and the other two heard this, they shook their heads in unison and adopted a modest manner. When Baby saw that they were so teachable, he felt even more pleased in his heart. He smiled a little wretchedly and said in a small voice, "Cut off the most important part of a man. After cutting off that part, the man will be impotent in the future. This way, the man who loves Master will be assured that there are creatures of the opposite sex staying by Master's side. Otherwise, there's no need to talk." Ah! When Ji Yun and the other two heard this, they were instantly dumbfounded. The expressions on their faces were extremely strange. This little fox seemed to be telling them the truth. They couldn't be sure of it in such a short time. However, if this matter was true, then the man who stayed by Lung Ruox's side was a little too pitiful, right? At the thought of this, the three of them looked at Lung Ruoxue to seek confirmation. However, Lung Ruoxue merely coughed a few times and turned her head to the side in embarrassment, ignoring the 6 pairs of eyes that were filled with anticipation. Seeing Lung Ruox's embarrassment, the three of them felt their hearts sink. Could this be true? Because Lung Ruoxue did not deny it, and since she did not deny it, the three of them naturally took it as a silent agreement. As they were worried that Ji Yun would do something irrational in his impulsiveness, Ji Woo and Ji Tao immediately dragged the unwilling Ji Yun to a corner after coming to this conclusion. They began to persuade him to dispel any thoughts he shouldn't have. After all, if a man were to be cut by a knife, his life would be over. Seeing that they had something to discuss, Lung Ruoxue carried the treasure back to her own tent. As for Zhou Kun and the other two, they were cleaning up the waste that they had discharged at the place where they had defecated previously. As the three of them had pulled it too many times, the cleaning process was a bit big. However, the three of them had already split up the work. Zhou Kun's 2 lackeys were in charge of cleaning the feces on the ground, while Zhou Kun was in charge of cleaning the dirt on the ground with his water attribute divine skill. When the 2 lackeys used a small shovel that they had found somewhere to clean up the feces and pile them up, the 2 of them were a little troubled. This was because they had no place to throw these things. If they threw these excretions somewhere else, it would be equivalent to them working for nothing. Damn it! What are you guys doing? Hurry up and get to work. Zhou Kun, who was as tired as a dead dog, panted and roared, "Damn it!" He had cleaned up so many places and was half dead from exhaustion, but these 2 insensible things beside him had actually taken a break. This was really preposterous. "Young Master Kun, there's no place to throw these things." Upon hearing Zhou Kun's reprimand, one of the lackeys hurriedly said, "Why don't you have a place to throw it? Just throw it somewhere." Zhou Kun was stunned as soon as he said that. All the places here belonged to the Divine Master. No matter where he threw it, the nature of the matter was the same. So, it seemed like there was really no place to settle it. Immediately, the three of them frowned and were at a loss. After thinking hard for a long time, Zhou Kun suddenly had a flash of inspiration in his mind, and he said loudly, "Zhou Cheng, hand over your storage ring." "A storage ring? Why?" Zhou Cheng asked with a pained expression. The storage ring that he was wearing now was a reward from his family not long ago. The space inside was very large, and he had been reluctant to use it. He wanted to put more things in preparation for entering the special space, so he used the ring. Who knew that young Master Kun would actually ask him to give up the ring? Suddenly, the only thought in his mind was that young Master Kun wanted to steal his things. However, after thinking about it again, the possibility of this was too low. After all, young Master Kun knew very well what was in his ring, but young Master Kun didn't even care about it. He couldn't understand what young Master Kun meant. What other reason could it be? Of course it's to pack things. Zhou Kun roared in a bad mood. Chapter 1850, Strange Movement, 1. What are you trying to store? Zhou Cheng stammered as he asked. He did not know why, but he had a bad feeling in his heart. Wu, how could this be? Just treat this as storing these rubbish. Zhou Kun pointed at the pile of disgusting, stinky things on the ground and said matter-of-factly. Zhou Cheng was dumbfounded when he heard that. Young Master Kun. And no, I can't. How can you use my storage ring to store these things? After a long while, Zhou Cheng finally came back to his senses and said with a long face, "If I don't use yours, do I have to use mine?" Zhou Kun glared at him and said fiercely, "Of course you can't." Zhou Cheng said hurriedly, but his eyes secretly looked at Zhou Li, who was standing at the side, gloating. Why didn't he use Zhou Li's storage ring? Zhou Cheng couldn't help but think to himself in anger. Zhou Cheng, don't even think about it. My storage equipment was given to me by young Master Kun. Zhou Li said with a smile. In other words, he was saying, you dare to use the storage ring that young Master Kun gave you to store these things? Young Master Kun will definitely get angry with you first. Sure enough, as Zhou Li had expected, after hearing Zhou Li's words, Zhou Kun glared at him unhappily and ordered loudly, "Stop talking nonsense. Quickly hand over your storage ring. They'll get you a better one in the future." He was running out of patience. "Oh." Zhou Cheng responded unwillingly. Who asked him to be in such a disadvantageous position now? However, he did not have any hope for Zhou Kun to get him a better storage ring. Although the Zhou family could not be compared to the 8 great divine realms, it was still considered a top-notch force in the divine realm. However, it was also because it was a large family clan that there were many clansmen. As a result, the family's resources were slightly limited. If one was not from the main branch of the family or a branch family with good qualifications, it would be difficult for an ordinary clansman to stand out in the family. However, it was also because he was close to Zhou Kun, who was from the main branch, that his life in the Zhou family was better. However, he was only slightly stronger than the other members of the branch family. Otherwise, he would not have treated the storage ring given to him by the family as a treasure. It was a pity that the ring was about to leave him. Zhou Cheng felt his heart ache, especially when he handed over his storage ring. He felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. Seeing this, Zhou Li comforted him, "Don't be so stingy. After we get out, we can still use the storage ring after it's cleaned." "Use my ass." Upon hearing this, Zhou Cheng was furious. This fellow was actually making sarcastic remarks. So it wasn't his storage ring. Enough. Don't make any noise. Zhou Kun, who had run out of patience, glanced at the two of them and roared in anger. Then he handed the ring to Zhou Li and said, "Hurry up and pack up these things." Fuck. He had been cleaning up the feces for almost a night, and he was exhausted. More importantly, he had lost a lot of face. As for whether he could keep his life, he had no confidence at all. So, he hoped that the Master God would spare their lives on account that they had made up for their mistakes. He prayed sincerely. Yes. Zhou Li happily took the storage ring that Zhou Kun handed over and stored all the stinky things that were piled on the ground into the ring. Although the work was a little disgusting, it was worth it to be able to see Zhou Cheng's depression. After cleaning up the waste on the ground, Zhou Kun cleaned up the ground with his water attribute divine skill. By the time they were done, it was almost dawn. The three of them returned to the tent like dead dogs and refused to come out. Although they were already gods, their cultivation was limited after all. They would still feel tired if they overexerted themselves. As expected, Zhou Kun and the other two's performance in the special space was fully exposed to everyone. In the beginning, when they saw the 3 big white buttocks on the light screen, all of them had an incredulous expression on their faces, and their foreheads were filled with black lines. Later on, what Zhou Kun and the other two did also made them dumbfounded. Many people couldn't believe their eyes. They even thought that they had seen it wrong. Because such a thing was simply impossible and shouldn't have appeared in the elite gathering. However, it had appeared. A good and proper elite gathering was held under the eyes of thousands of people. However, in just a few days, such an unforeseen event occurred. Was this still the extremely serious elite gathering? This was clearly a prank. They wanted to destroy the essence of the elite gathering. With this thought in mind, everyone looked at the Zhou clan leader with anger and hostility. Clan leader Zhou, that Zhou Kun is a junior that you like more, right? His way of doing things was indeed different. It has the style of your Zhou family. Next to the Zhou family was the Ji family seat, and the one who had spoken was the Ji family's patriarch, who had a gloating expression on his face. Seeing the constipated expression on Patriarch Zhou's face, Patriarch Ji was overjoyed. At first, he had been quite dissatisfied with the God Lord's estate's arrangement of the two families together. After all, it was well known in the divine world that the two families were not on good terms. But now, he was somewhat grateful for the God Lord's estate's arrangement. Moreover, under close observation, the expression on the Zhou family's master's face kept changing. It was particularly wonderful to watch. This could be considered a rare sight. The master of the Ji family was in a great mood. If you don't speak, no one will think you're mute. The Zhou clan leader gritted his teeth and growled as he listened to the Ji clan leaders gloating and mocking. At this moment, his lungs were about to explode from anger. That damned Zhou Kun. She initially thought that he was a reliable person. Who knew that he would do such an embarrassing thing? The Zhou family had lost all their face. However, losing face was not a big deal. If the Divine Lord's estate were to pursue the matter, the Zhou family would probably be implicated. But this was absolutely not allowed. He could not implicate the Zhou family because of these three idiots. At this moment, the Zhou clan leader immediately made the decision to sacrifice the war chariot to protect the general. The death of 3 incompetent clan members was not a big deal, but the Zhou clan could not be harmed. Just as the Zhou family's master made his decision, the guards of the Divine Lord's estate immediately came to invite him, saying that the Divine Lord's estate had something important to discuss with him. Seeing this, the Zhou family's master's heart sank. What he was afraid of really happened. The head of the Zhou clan's face was pale as he followed behind the guard in a daze. He did not even dare to look back as he left. After he left, the crowd was in a heated discussion. Some even boldly predicted that the Zhou family would probably be removed from the list of top families. And among these people, there were those who lamented the fickleness of things, and there were also those who gloated. Seeing this scene, the first elder sitting in the Ning family's seat became curious again. Old man Ning, do you think that the Zhou family will really be unlucky? I don't know, but even if they're not unlucky, I'm afraid the Zhou family won't have a good time in the future. How could this happen? It's so funny. The master of the Ning family smiled. Compared to some people's gloating, he felt that the matter was more ridiculous. Chapter 1851, Strange Movement, 2. He probably fell for it, but he deserved it. The first elder did not sympathize with Zhou Kun at all. However, he was very curious about the person who had caused Zhou Kun to fall for it. Could it be the little girl's doing? I think I'll be honest for a while. The master of the Ning family said with a smile. I don't think so. Uncle Long, who had been resting with his eyes closed, suddenly interrupted. Don't tell me he's going to be smug? The first elder asked in surprise. Just wait and see. I want to say that this year's elite gathering is very exciting. Uncle Long praised. Hearing Uncle Long's words, the first elder and the master of the Ning family couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat on their foreheads. They thought to themselves, Uncle Long's appreciation level is indeed different from others. However, compared with the previous elite meetings, this one seems a bit funny. Looking at their expressions, Uncle Long smiled. He didn't say anything and closed his eyes again. At this moment, the sky in the special space was already bright. In the special space, it was divided into day and night. At night, the special space had an extra trace of eeriness and horror. Therefore, Leng Ruoxue and the others would find a fixed place to rest at night. However, it seemed that today was destined to be different. When Leng Ruoxue came out of the tent with her treasure, she only saw Ji Yun and the other two. Zhou Kun and the other two were nowhere to be seen. Could it be that those 3 fellows had fled to avoid punishment? However, even if he were to escape, he wouldn't be able to escape from the Divine Master's palm, right? She thought to herself. Ruoxue, you're awake. The moment Ji Yun saw Leng Ruoxue, he immediately ran to her like a little tail. His clear and bright eyes, like those of a little white rabbit, stared at Leng Ruoxue without blinking. Leng Ruoxue nodded. She glanced at the excited Ji Yun and thought to herself, it seems like the talk about the treasure being cut with one blade yesterday didn't affect this fellow? Why did he still look so heartless? Ruoxue, I've made breakfast. Come and eat. Ji-yun was in a good mood and was very enthusiastic towards Lung Ruoshua. Lung Ruoshua nodded and walked over to the table that had been set up. She happened to see Ji Tao looking at her with a strange expression. Instantly, countless black lines slid down her forehead. What's wrong? Lung Ruoshua was a little surprised. Ji Tao's gaze was too strange. She didn't do anything, right? I'm fine. Ji Tao stuttered a little, and his handsome face was stained with a trace of embarrassment. Since you're fine, why are you looking at me like that? Lung Ruoshua raised her brows and asked curiously. Miss Lung's devastatingly beautiful face is unparalleled in the world, so I couldn't help but take a few more glances. Ji Tao's mind whirred as he hurriedly replied. He calmly wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. That was close, he almost told the truth. Actually, his main intention was to observe what kind of charm Lung Ruoshua had. They had tried to persuade him for a long time last night, but he had remained unmoved. However, it was undeniable that this woman's beauty was unparalleled in this world. If he didn't already have someone he liked, he would probably also fall in love with her. However, she already had a fiancé. He couldn't understand why Ji-yun was still involved. Did he really want to be cut and be unable to have sex in the future? Lung Ruoshua was a little speechless. Although Ji Tao's words were a compliment, why did she feel that something was wrong when she heard it? At this moment, Ji-yun had already brought a bowl of fragrant porridge and walked to Lung Ruoxua's side. He said politely, Ruoshua, this is the porridge I made for you. Try it and see if it suits your taste. After she finished speaking, she looked at Lung Ruoshua with anticipation. Her clear eyes were filled with the words hurry up and eat. Looking at the bowl of porridge, Lung Ruoxua's head ached. Although the kanji was personally made by Ji-yun and she should show her support, it was precisely because of this that she did not dare to accept it. After all, she knew that Ji-yun was not a kind and innocent little rabbit. Naturally, she was more vigilant against him. Moreover, if the evildoer knew that she had eaten the porridge cooked by another man, he might do something. She had to be careful. Thank you. But I don't like porridge. Lung Ruoshua said apologetically. It doesn't matter, then let this little beast drink it. I put a lot of chicken in here. This little fox will definitely like it. Ji-yun, who was already prepared, had a calm smile on his face. However, he still felt a little hurt in his heart. Ruoshua had rejected him again. Ever since the two of them had met, he had washed his hands and made soup for Ruoshua every day. Unfortunately, he had never tasted any of it in Ruoxua's mouth. This fact made him extremely conflicted. Was he really that unattractive? He didn't believe it. However, it was also because of this that he became braver. I don't like porridge either. I only eat meat. Baby, who heard this, quickly said in dissatisfaction. Eating meat so early in the morning is bad for digestion. It's better to eat something light. Ji-yun placed the kanji in front of his baby and coaxed him. I don't want to. Baby stubbornly turned its little head and decided not to give this silly boy any face. However, Ji-yun was even more stubborn than Baby. He picked up the spoon and fed Baby a spoonful. He continued to coax, be good. This kanji is very delicious. Ji-yun had decided. To please the people or beasts by Lung Ruoxua's side, he would start with this little fox. However, this little fox didn't seem to be easy to deal with. It didn't matter, he had plenty of patience. He would definitely succeed one day. I said I'm not eating. Do you not understand human language? The baby was furious. Did this guy have to force it to swear? You're not a human to begin with? Ji-yun's eyes were wide open as he warned in a low voice. Upon hearing his words, Baby became even angrier. He was so angry that all the hair on his body stood on end. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws, wanting to rush in front of Ji-yun to scratch him. However, it was fortunate that Lung Ruoshua held onto his furious baby tightly. Otherwise, Ji-yun's handsome face would have been ruined. Calm down. Lung Ruoshua caressed Baby's fur and comforted him. Cute master. Don't stop me, let me teach him a good lesson. Baby roared in anger and bared his teeth to intimidate Ji-yun. However, this gave Ji-yun a chance to ask for help. She saw Ji-yun-shu lean towards Lung Ruoshue with tears in her eyes. She tugged at the corner of her clothes and said with a wronged expression, "Ruoshue, your little beast is so fierce. Like master, like beast." The master was fierce, and so were the beast. This was probably what her father had always said: if you're not a family, you can't enter the same house. Baby isn't usually like this. Lung Ruoshue said with a faint smile as she avoided Ji-yun's touch. What does it usually look like? Ji-yun tried to start a conversation. Very well behaved, obedient, and cute. Lung Ruoshue laughed as she spoke. Upon hearing these words, Baby's tsundere little tail was about to stand up. Chapter 1852, Strange Movement, 3. Oh. Ji-yun softly replied. Actually, he really wanted to say, "Why can't I see how cute this little fox is?" It seemed that from the moment he saw this little fox, this little fellow had never given him a good look. "Silly boy, what are you, for? Hurry up and take your kanji away. I want meat, not kanji." Baby gently raised his little chin and said like a master, "There's meat in the porridge. Didn't I say that I put a lot of chicken in it?" Ji-yun was still trying his best to promote his kanji. "I don't eat the meat in the porridge. Go get me some roasted meat." The treasurer ordered Ji-yun as if it was a matter of course. However, when Ji-tao and Ji-woo heard this, they didn't know what to say. They could only remain silent. But there's only porridge and no roasted meat. Ji-yun was in a difficult position. He thought to himself, this little fox is really difficult to serve. He had never heard of anyone eating barbecued meat so early in the morning. "I don't care, I just want to eat roasted meat," Baby deliberately said in a difficult tone. "All right then. Wait a minute." Ji-yun was helpless. He resigned himself to his fate and could only go roast meat for the fox. Did he have it easy? When his precious baby got to eat the roasted meat as he wished, he was satisfied and no longer looked for trouble with Ji-yun. However, it was clearly impossible for Ji-yun to please him so easily. Not long after they had breakfast, they were hesitating about whether to continue on their way when Zhou Kun and the other two, who were pale-faced, walked out of their tents unsteadily. After seeing Ji-yun and the other two, everything that had happened last night was suddenly ignited again. "Damn it! What did you three do to us?" "Who are you?" Zhou Kun shouted angrily when he saw Ji-yun and the other two. "We didn't do anything." Ji-yun blinked his eyes, his face filled with grievance and confusion. "You didn't do anything? Then how did we get the runs?" Zhou Kun asked with a red face. His liver ached at the thought of it. Not only did Ji-yun and the other two embarrass them, but they also caused them to lose their lives. How could he not hate them? Whenever he thought about the unknown future, he would feel lost. However, if he didn't have a good life, then Ji-yun and the other two wouldn't have a good life either. "How would we know?" Ji-yun pouted, feeling extremely wronged. "That's right. You guys ate something bad and now you're blaming it on us?" Ji-tao also glared at Zhou Kun and the other two in dissatisfaction. "What do you mean we ate something bad? We didn't eat anything else other than Ji-yun's roasted chicken yesterday. Who else could it be if not him?" Zhou Kun shouted at the top of his lungs, while Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng also glared at Ji-yun and the other two menacingly. They should have gotten to the bottom of this matter last night, but they were busy destroying the corpses at that time, so they had delayed it until now. "Are you sure you've never eaten anything else? You haven't even had a sip of water?" Ji-woo asked suspiciously. Then he continued, "You said that the problem was caused by eating the chicken we roasted, but we ate the chicken yesterday too. How are we fine?" As soon as Ji-woo asked his question, Zhou Kun and the other two were immediately at a loss for words. After a long while, Zhou Kun had a flash of inspiration and said, "We didn't eat the same batch. The three of us ate the roasted meat first, while you ate the roasted meat later. That's why there's no problem with yours." "Oh really? However, if I remember correctly, 4 of them were roasted and the 3 of you ate one each. As for the other one, it was eaten by this little fox. It didn't have diarrhea." Ji-woo pointed at the treasure with a faint smile. He couldn't help but secretly rejoice that there was a witness. Otherwise, they would have been unable to clear their names even if they jumped into the Yellow River. The chicken tasted pretty good. I didn't have a stomachache. Seeing that he was involved in the matter, Baby had no choice but to come out and prove that he was fine. Why are with them, so of course you'll side with them. Zhou Li immediately said. You're wrong. I'm not with them. She's my master. Baby pointed at Leng Ruoxue. Then he looked at his master with an aggrieved expression, as if he was saying, who wants to be on the same side as that silly kid? The treasure is my beastie, don't be mistaken. Leng Ruoxue squinted her eyes and said in a slightly displeased tone. You idiot! Who allowed you to speak such nonsense? Upon seeing that, Zhou Kun smacked Zhou Li's head hard and growled in a low voice. Then he smiled at Leng Ruoxue and said, Hee hee. Miss Leng, Zhou Li didn't mean it that way. Please don't misunderstand. We only suspect that Ji Yun and the others have something to do with this, but we have no suspicions about your little beastie. That's good. Leng Ruoxue smiled faintly, and Zhou Kun was immediately captivated by her. He was stunned, and a suspicious liquid flowed out of the corner of his mouth. However, what my baby said is true. Nothing happened to it after eating the chicken yesterday, so you'd better think about it carefully and see if it had eaten anything else. Leng Ruoxue then suggested. Just as Leng Ruoxue finished her sentence, Zhou Li suddenly shouted in shock, Young Master Kun. I remember, we seemed to have eaten yesterday afternoon. However, Zhou Li was interrupted by Zhou Kun before he could finish his sentence. What nonsense are you talking about? Where did we eat at noon? Zhou Kun glared at Zhou Li and roared with resentment. Arg! Never eaten before. I've remembered it wrong. Zhou Li also knew that he had said the wrong thing and quickly changed his words. However, when Ji Yun and the other two heard their conversation, they all smiled without saying a word. However, the slightly mocking expression on their faces made Zhou Kun's heart burn with anger. Damn it! What are you looking at? I've never seen a beautiful man before. Zhou Kun was furious. You can be considered a handsome man? Upon hearing this, Ji Tao laughed. Although Zhou Kun was not ugly, he was still a distance away from being a handsome man. This had a lot to do with the Zhou family's inheritance, because the Zhou family's appearance was not very outstanding in the divine realm. How am I not considered a handsome man? Zhou Kun glared at him with his eyes that were spewing fire and said fiercely, Fuck! He actually dared to say that about him in front of a beauty? How preposterous! At this moment, although he was still a little worried about the punishment from the Divine Master's estate, his lust also prevailed. Therefore, he was determined to get Leng Ruoxue. No matter how I look at you, you can't be considered a handsome man. Ji Tao sized up Zhou Kun and told the truth. Zhou Kun was so infuriated by Ji Tao that he was speechless. If it were not for the fact that he still wanted to maintain a good image in front of Leng Ruoxue, he would have definitely taught Ji Tao a lesson. Stop arguing. Young Master Zhou, regarding the fact that you had diarrhea the entire night, I am deeply sympathetic. However, you do not have any evidence to prove that this matter was man-made. So, I hope that you both will stop arguing over this matter. Since this matter has already happened, you'd better think about how to deal with it. If my guess is correct, the God Lord's estate will definitely punish you for this matter. Leng Ruoxue reminded them earnestly and couldn't help but laugh in her heart. I'm afraid that Zhou Kun and the other two will have a hard time this time. He probably wouldn't have the time to have any ideas about her, right? Leng Ruoxue's words made Zhou Kun feel extremely touched. The beauty is still the best. She was considerate and understanding, always thinking about him. He had decided that he would treat this beauty well in the future. Zhou Kun decided in his heart. However, it was fortunate that Leng Ruoxue did not know what Zhou Kun was thinking. If she had known that Zhou Kun had made up his mind because of her words, she would probably be depressed to death. Seeing that Zhou Kun's eyes were suddenly filled with tears, Leng Ruoxue thought that Zhou Kun was frightened by the name of the Divine Lord's estate. She did not know that he was actually crying because he was touched. Young Master Zhou, the matter might not be as serious as you think, so you don't have to be too afraid. Lung Ruoxue consoled him perfunctorily. If the God Lord's estate wants to pursue this matter, I will admit my mistakes to them. Zhou Kun said very sincerely, then continued, Miss Lung, thank you for your concern. I'm so happy. Upon hearing Zhou Kun's words, Lung Ruoxue could tell that something was amiss. A few drops of cold sweat hung on her forehead as she secretly complained, Did I say something? Why did Zhou Kun have such a reaction? However, she did not want to pay too much attention to Zhou Kun. Hence, she changed the topic and suggested, Since young Master Zhou and the other two are fine, let's set off. Yes, yes. Ji Yun was the first to raise both hands in agreement. As long as it was something Ruoxue said, he would agree to it. Let's go. Zhou Kun said, unwilling to be outdone. Although his body was still a little weak at the moment, he could not lose to this useless coward. Just like that, the group of 7 continued on their way. However, this time, Zhou Kun kept a respectful distance from the food that Ji Yun and the other 2 had brought him. However, they still had diarrhea as usual while eating the food that he had brought. In this way, the truth was revealed. It was the food they brought that wasn't clean. After Ji Yun found out about it, she even deliberately ran to Zhou Kun, who was exhausted from diarrhea, and said with a wronged look, It's really none of my business, right? Do you know that you've wronged me now? His words made Zhou Kun so angry that he gritted his teeth and did not manage to curse at him. After dragging them for 3 days in a row, Zhou Kun and the other 2 were unable to move no matter what. Out of desperation, Lung Ruoxue and the others had no choice but to stay with them temporarily. At this time, it had been almost half a month since they entered the special space. However, apart from the Ji and Zhou families who had temporarily stopped fighting, they had not seen any other participants from the other families. All of a sudden, the earth trembled and the mountains shook. The special space began to shake violently. Chapter 1853, The Barrier Shattered, 1. At that moment, the special space was distorted, and the trees and rocks were shaking to different degrees. Lung Ruoxue and the others who were in the special space felt the unusual violent shaking. They quickly pulled on the fixed objects beside them, such as trees and hills, to prevent themselves from falling to the ground. But at the same time, a deafening shriek suddenly rang out. Arg! Damn it! Quickly let go of me! The person who screamed was Zhou Kun. The reason why he screamed so loudly was because Ji Yun had used him as a tree stump and was holding him tightly. As for Zhou Kun, he was swaying and finally plopped. With a sound, he fell on the ground gloriously. After the violent shaking came to a temporary end, Zhou Kun tried his best to get up and glared at Ji Yun as he roared, Fuck! You coward, why are you pulling me? There's a tree over there, you know that. As soon as he finished shouting, the special space shook violently again. He was not prepared for it and fell down again. Upon seeing this, Lung Ruoxue and the rest snickered in their hearts. On the other hand, Ji Yun revealed a pure and innocent expression as she looked at Zhou Kun and said, I didn't mean to grab you. You were the closest to me, so it was my instinct to grab you. After saying that, he even shrank his neck, as if Zhou Kun would beat him up at any time. But you can't grab my chest. You can grab anywhere. Why are you grabbing onto her chest? Zhou Kun was furious. His chest was very sensitive, and he actually had a reaction after being grabbed by Ji Yun. This was the main reason why he was flustered and exasperated. The one who caught him was a real man. Although this man was a little sissy, his gender was unquestionable. I didn't do it on purpose. Besides, I've already caught you, what else do you want to do? Do you want me to take responsibility for you? I'm telling you I like women. So, you'd better not blame me. Ji Yun spoke in a serious tone. Upon hearing his words, Zhou Kun's face turned livid with anger. He trembled all over and pointed at Ji Yun, unable to say a complete sentence. However, when Lung Ruoxue, Ji Wu, Ji Tao, and Baby heard their conversation, they were overjoyed and couldn't help but laugh out loud. As for Zhou Cheng and Zhou Li, their shoulders were trembling violently. It was obvious that they were having a hard time holding it in. Haha. Lung Ruoxue laughed happily. The two of them were so funny. To be honest, Lung Ruoxue deeply felt that the two of them were quite funny together. Besides, Zhou Kun was tall and burly, while Ji Yun looked weak and fragile. When the two of them stood together, they actually looked surprisingly harmonious. It seemed that she also had the potential to be a fujoshi. Miss Ling, I'm being bullied, and you're actually still laughing. After a long while, Zhou Kun, who only regained his senses after hearing the laughter, could not help but say with a bitter expression when he saw Lung Ruoxue laughing so happily. Ah! Upon hearing Zhou Kun's words, Lung Ruoxue could not help but wipe the cold sweat on her forehead. She thought to herself, is Zhou Kun acting coquettishly? A man as strong as a bear had said such words to her. It was too terrifying. She couldn't help but shiver. Ruoxue, I didn't bully him. I didn't grab his chest on purpose. He still wants to frame me and make me take responsibility. I will definitely not be responsible for him. At this moment, Ji Yun also spoke with righteous indignation. His handsome little face was still alternating between green and white, and he was faintly in a state of fury. Damn it! When did I say that I want you to take responsibility? Ji Yun's words made Zhou Kun jump in shock. If it were not for his weak body, he would have jumped even higher. This was really too hateful, wasn't this just trying to lie? You didn't say it clearly, but you made it very clear that I understand. I'll say it again, don't think I'll take responsibility for you. When Lung Ruoxue and the others heard this, they were all impressed by Ji Yun. Especially when they saw Zhou Kun's face, which was uglier than constipation, they felt that the highest level of anger was Ji Yun's. He kept pretending to be stupid, but the other party could not do anything to him. Who asked him to think that Ji Yun was a fool? Wouldn't he be stupider than a fool to argue with a fool? Seeing that Zhou Kun's body was fuming with anger and there was a tendency for green smoke to rise from the top of his head, Lung Ruoxue became the peacemaker and said, All right. Everyone please speak less. What happened just now was just an accident, and the cause was an earthquake. So, don't destroy our unity because of such a small matter. Let's think about what we should do next. If she did not speak, Zhou Kun would probably kill Ji Yun in a fit of anger. To be honest, she was not sure what kind of strength Ji Yun had. Since Lung Ruoxue had spoken, Zhou Kun only snorted coldly and turned his head away to ignore Ji Yun. Ji Yun, on the other hand, ran over to Lung Ruoxue and said with a silly smile, I'll listen to everything Ruoxue says. Well, do whatever Ruoxue says. His words made Ji Wu and Ji Tao speechless. They couldn't bear it anymore and complained in their hearts, does this guy have any principles? As for Zhou Kun, when he heard those nauseating words, apart from feeling nauseated, he also wanted to give Ji Yun a good beating. This coward was really too despicable. He actually tried to please Lung Ruoxue in front of him. He could tolerate it but not his aunt. But I don't know what we should do. The earthquake just now came too suddenly. Lung Ruoxue said with a faint smile. She didn't know why, but she felt that something was about to happen. Then what should we do? When Ji Yun heard this, he was instantly dumbfounded. He had no idea what to do. What else can we do? Of course, I'm looking for the reason. Zhou Kun shouted in a rough voice, looking down on Ji Yun's submissive appearance. Where can we find the reason? Ji Yun asked shamelessly, his clear eyes wide open. How would I know? Zhou Kun roared in a bad mood. Since you don't even know where we should go to find the reason, then aren't you just talking nonsense? Who wouldn't have thought of the reason? The key is where we can find the reason. Ji Yun lectured Zhou Kun in a serious and earnest manner, causing him to be stunned and unable to react for a long time. After he finished speaking, Ji Yun turned to Lung Ruoxue and said, Ruoxue, what I said makes sense, right? Lung Ruoxue nodded helplessly. She could tell that although Zhou Kun had always wanted to find trouble with Ji Yun was like Zhou Kun's nemesis. Not only did he not manage to find trouble with him, but he also infuriated Lung Ruoxue to death in the end. The interaction between people was indeed wonderful. She had a deep understanding of this. Then you think of a good idea. After being stunned for a moment, Zhou Kun came back to his senses. At the same time, he happened to hear Ji Yun acting obediently to Lung Ruoxue, who responded to him. He was immediately enraged and said to Ji Yun, "I'll listen to everything Ruoxue says." Ji Yun said shyly. From his words, it seemed like Lung Ruoxue was the head of the family. Chapter 1854. The Barrier Shattered. 2. Upon hearing that, Zhou Kuan became even angrier and couldn't help but curse. "Fuck! You coward, are you even a man? How could he let a woman stand up for him? You've disgraced us men, so don't tell anyone that I know you. It's fine if you don't want to say it. Do you think you're some famous person? Ah, it was wrong. You're indeed famous now. After all, in the entire divine realm, only the three of you from your Zhou clan would dare to shit here. No one else would have the guts to do so." Ji Yun touched a sore spot and deliberately added salt to Zhou Kun's wound. As for Zhou Kun, he was so angry that his face turned pale and his body trembled non-stop. Upon seeing this, Lung Ruoxue was really afraid that he would faint accidentally. She was not concerned about him, but if Zhou Kun fainted, it would bring them trouble. At that time, wouldn't they still have to stay here to accompany him? Cough, cough. Lung Ruoxue cleared her throat and coughed twice. At the same time, she gave Ji Yun a look, telling him to stop while he was ahead and not to go too far. Although Zhou Kun was quite annoying with the three of them around, they could at least help when they encountered trouble. However, if he were to faint from anger, wouldn't they be the ones in trouble? Ji Yun understood what he meant and obediently shut his mouth, pretending to be obedient. Zhou Kun's body trembled for a long time before he finally calmed down. He seemed to have collapsed and sat on the ground. His face was pale, as if he had seen a ghost. After a long time, the color on Zhou Kun's face finally returned to normal. Upon seeing that, Lung Ruoxue suggested that they leave the place and go somewhere else to take a look. After all, the tremor just now could not have happened without any warning. There must have been some signs. After a few days of rest, the group finally set off again. At this time, the various families that were watching the special space through the screen outside the arena also received the news from the Divine Lord's estate. In the special space, all the barriers had shattered for some reason. The moment they heard this news, all the family representatives turned pale with fright. The barrier shattered? What did that mean? It meant that the participants would not be restricted to any group. In other words, it was possible for a divine emperor to encounter a priest. If there was a conflict between the two sides, the priest would have a reason to kill. When they thought of this possibility, all the family representatives could no longer remain calm. After all, which family did not have a few enemies? If someone had really done something to them in the special space, they would be helpless. After all, the Divine Master's estate had ordered before the match that life and death were up to fate in the special space. Moreover, if a member of the clan was killed by the enemy, he was not allowed to take the opportunity to cause trouble and seek revenge. This was the cruelest part of the competition. However, even though they were mentally prepared for the possible death of their clansmen, they would not be able to remain calm if someone really died. Compared to the other people who were scared and jittery, the Ning family's exclusive seats were quite calm. In fact, it was not that the foreign affairs elder and the others were not worried, nor that they did not want to speak. It was just that seeing that the family master and Uncle Long were all silent, as if they were thinking, no one dared to disturb them. After a long while, Uncle Long broke the heavy atmosphere and said, "Ning family boy, what do you think of this?" Hearing Uncle Long speak, the foreign affairs elder and the others finally heaved a sigh of relief. Before this, they didn't even dare to breathe. "I think this is a bit abnormal. You should know that this is not the first time the elite gathering is held. How could there be such a mistake? Furthermore, that special space was personally created by Master Yu. How could the space barrier be broken?" The master of the Ning family frowned. As he said this, his eyes turned to the first elder. "Old man, don't you think so?" The master of the Ning family asked the grand elder. Master Yu is a godlike existence in the hearts of us artifact craftsmen. The things he refines must be of the highest quality, so it's impossible for such a problem to occur. Let alone the equipment refined by Master Yu, Even an ordinary artifact craftsman would not make such a low-level mistake. The first elder said with a serious expression. He could not help but worry for Lung Ruoxue and the rest because this accident was obviously man-made. When Uncle Long heard their conversation, he looked at them quietly for a long time. In the end, he didn't say a word and continued to close his eyes. However, at this time, his heart was already in turmoil because he knew that this incident was most likely directed at Shuer. However, he believed in the little girl's ability and believed that she would be able to settle this matter. The reason why he didn't explain it too clearly was because he was afraid that the two boys would be worried and lose control. In fact, no matter what was happening in the special space, they could only watch helplessly. Hence, they could only trust in Lung Ruoxue and the rest's ability to adapt to any situation. Seeing Uncle Long's reaction, the master of the Ning family and the first elder both understood what he meant. After sighing, they fell silent again, and the atmosphere became even more depressing than before. When the foreign affairs elder and the others saw this, their foreheads were full of cold sweat, and they didn't dare to breathe. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue and the others who were searching for the reason in the special space were completely unaware of the worried feelings of the representatives from the various families. That was until they met another person. That person had the cultivation of a god king. Lung Ruoxue squinted her beautiful eyes as she sized up the arrogant man who treated them like ants. The man had an ordinary appearance and looked to be around 30 years old. His eyes were slightly cloudy as he stared lecherously at Lung Ruoxue's perky breasts. He smacked his lips and his eyes revealed a determined expression. When she saw his lecherous gaze, Lung Ruoxue laughed coldly in her heart. If not for the fact that she was afraid of exposing her true strength, she would have long gone up to teach this man a lesson. He dared to look at her so openly and with such a perverted gaze. Wasn't he looking for death? Moreover, when she saw the man, Lung Ruoxue realized that Zhou Kuan was not too bad. At least, on the surface, Zhou Kuan respected her very much. However, this man was clearly challenging the limits of her patience. Although Lung Ruoxue was enduring it silently, Zhou Kuan could not stand it. One should know that he had long treated Lung Ruoxue as his own possession. Of course, only he could look at his own woman in such an unbridled manner. If other men dared to use such a vulgar gaze to size up his woman, weren't they challenging his dignity as a man? Therefore, Zhou Kuan was furious. The anger that he had accumulated over the past few days suddenly exploded at this moment. Zhou Kuan was like a shooting star as he rushed in front of the man and raised his hand to punch him. His fist contained a surging divine power, and it was as cold as the cold wind as it attacked the lecherous man opposite him. The man saw that Zhou Kuan was not coming with good intentions and quickly dodged to the side to avoid the punch. However, the wind from the punch still brushed past his shoulder and left a bloody wound on his body. He was instantly enraged. Chapter 1855. The Barrier Shattered. 3. Where did this wild brat come from? How dare you injure your grandpa's son? The man bellowed in anger. His voice was unusually sharp, causing Lung Ruoxue and the others' eardrums to ring. I'm hitting you. You dare to covet my woman, you must be tired of living. Zhou Kuan said angrily. He couldn't deal with Ji Yun in front of Lung Ruoxue, but could he not deal with this fellow who had come to his door to seek death? At this moment, Zhou Kuan was filled with anger and did not pay attention to the man's cultivation level at all. Moreover, he was not as capable as Lung Ruoxue to see through other people's cultivation levels. Therefore, even if he had seen it, he was afraid that he would not be able to see through the man's cultivation level. Otherwise, he would not have rushed forward to fight with the other party just because he was acting rashly. When Ji Yun saw how brave Zhou Kuan was, a look of admiration appeared on his handsome face. He then ran to Lung Ruoxue's side and exclaimed, Ruoxue, Zhou Kuan is so brave. You actually dare to fight someone of a higher level than you. In fact, he couldn't tell the man's cultivation level, and there could only be two reasons for such a situation. One was that the man's strength was above theirs, and the other was that he had hidden his cultivation. However, participants were not allowed to hide their strength here, otherwise, it would be unfair to the other participants. Therefore, he concluded that the man's strength was above theirs. However, Zhou Kun was obviously too busy venting his anger and didn't pay attention to the man's cultivation at all. He rushed forward without a care. Although he wanted to do that too, he was not an impulsive person by nature. Therefore, he was naturally not as brainless as Zhou Kun. He used more wisdom. Just like how he was with Ruoxue Hehe. After hearing Ji Yun's words, Lung Ruoxue shot him a glance and whispered, "This man clearly has ill intentions. Now is not the time to make sarcastic remarks. Quickly go and help him." As for why there was a God King level participant here, only the heavens would know. "Oh," Ji Yun softly replied, feeling a little wronged. In truth, he wasn't just being sarcastic. Although he didn't deny that he had the intention of watching the show, he was more worried about what they should do. If they couldn't deal with this man, then Ruoxue would be in deep trouble. Ji Yun, who was feeling a little depressed, immediately gave Ji Wu and Ji Tao a look. The two of them understood and rushed over to help Zhou Kun. Although they hated Zhou Kun from the bottom of their hearts, they were now on the same boat. Therefore, they naturally could not sit idly by. With Ji Wu and Ji Tao joining the battle, Zhou Kun, who was already sweating profusely and had cold sweat all over his forehead, suddenly felt a lot less pressure. Fuck. It was only after the fight that he realized that this despicable man was stronger than him. After knowing this fact, he had a moment of regret, but at the same time, he was also very clear that he had already driven a duck to the perch. He couldn't back down now. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to hold his head high in front of the Ji family's coward in the future. Although the pressure on Zhou Kun was reduced, the wretched-looking man felt that it was a little difficult to deal with 3 people at the same time. Initially, he was more than capable of dealing with Zhou Kun alone, but now that there were 2 more people, he not only had to guard against Zhou Kun's attack but also the sneak attack of the other 2 people at the same time. Hence, he seemed to be a little flustered. Although he was stronger than Ji Wu and the others, he wasn't strong enough to withstand a group attack. After all, his cultivation wasn't at the peak of the God King level. As a result, it was impossible for him to take on 100 people at once. But now he had only dealt with 3 people, and his steps were a bit messy. He thought that the other party would be intimidated by his cultivation and would be afraid of shooting at the rat for fear of breaking the vase. He didn't expect that these young fellows were like newborn calves who weren't afraid of tigers. They knew that his strength was above them, but they still dared to fight him head-on. This fact made him quite depressed. In fact, he had completely guessed wrong, because Zhou Kun had rushed forward to fight with him without any regard previously, not because he was not afraid, but because he had been impulsive. Otherwise, if Zhou Kun had known in advance that his cultivation base was higher than his, he might not have dared to do that. After seeing that this man was just a man with an empty appearance, Lung Ruoxue turned to Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng coldly and said, "Your young master Kun is fighting with someone. Aren't you going to help?" She had a very bad impression of Zhou Kun and his lackeys, especially at a time like this. Zhou Kun was leading the charge, but the 2 of them actually showed fear. Not only did they not have any intention of helping, but they even took a few steps back. This also made Lung Ruoxue's impression of them drop to the bottom. The other party's cultivation is above ours. Can we defeat him? Zhou Li couldn't help but say in a low voice. He only wanted to keep his little life and didn't want to die here. How would you know if you don't try? Do you want to die here? If we don't deal with this man, none of us will be able to escape. Lung Ruoxue reminded. No, that's impossible. His target is you. As long as you stay, he'll definitely let us live. Zhou Qing said as well. He was still a little resentful in his heart because the cause of this incident was Lung Ruoxue. Now, they were even implicated. So, why were their lives so bitter? What did you just say? Hearing Zhou Cheng's words, Lung Ruoxue narrowed her beautiful eyes and asked in an unfriendly tone. Say that again. Ji Yun also roared with unusual anger. For a moment, the aura on his body rose greatly. Zhou Cheng and Zhou Li were completely dumbfounded. However, they believed that their eyes were playing tricks on them. It was impossible for cowards from the Ji family to have such an intimidating aura. It must be. The two of them consoled themselves in their hearts. It's all because of this woman that we've attracted a strong enemy. So, isn't it fine to just hand her over to that man? Zhou Cheng warned as he did not sense any danger from Ji Yun. Is that so? Leng Ruoxue laughed coldly, feeling even more disgusted with the two lackeys of the Zhou family. However, before she could do anything, she saw a black bolt of lightning charging towards Zhou Cheng and Zhou Li. In that instant, other than the sounds of Zhou Kun, Ji Wu, and Ji Tao fighting with the wretched-looking man, there was only the sudden shrill shrieks that sounded like the wails of ghosts and the howls of wolves. Arg! Help me! The long and trembling cry caused Leng Ruoxue's hair to stand on end. She couldn't help but wonder why a man's scream was so shocking. However, what surprised her even more was Ji Yun. This fellow's attacks were fast, ruthless, and accurate. He specifically aimed for the weak and vital parts of a man's body, causing Leng Ruoxue to be extremely shocked. Oh my God! Was this the model of a small white rabbit transforming into a fierce big tiger? He didn't expect that Ji Yun, who had always pretended to be a weak little white rabbit, would be so intimidating when he was angry. Seeing Ji Yun's left fist and right leg beating up Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng, baby, who was lying in Leng Ruoxue's arms and watching the show, also felt his claws itch. Without even greeting Leng Ruoxue, he impatiently rushed into the one-sided battle between Ji Yun, Zhou Li, and Zhou Cheng. Watch my shadowless claw! Baby roared. After that, its 4 claws flew out, kicking and scratching repeatedly, and its tail even acted as a whip. But in the blink of an eye, Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng's clothes were torn and dangled on their bodies. They were in danger of being exposed at any time. Not only that, their faces and bodies were covered with countless claw marks. Needless to say, these were all the work of the treasure. In fact, it had long wanted to teach the 3 people of the Zhou family a lesson. However, seeing that Zhou Kun's performance today was rather remarkable, it decided to let him off for the time being. However, it would never let go of the 2 dogs. He actually wanted to hand over his cute master to that disgusting and wretched man. If this wasn't courting death, what was? At the thought of this, its shadowless claw once again displayed the advantage of being impossible to guard against. Very quickly, Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng fainted in a tragic state. After the baby made its move, the 2 could do nothing but let out painful howls until they finally fainted. The treasure's natural and smooth movements left Ji Yun dumbstruck. At this moment, he even felt that he had been too lenient. Look at how ruthless this little fox is. It turned out that it was not his own flesh. He glanced at the minced meat that had fallen beside Zhou Cheng and Zhou Li. He was so disgusted that he almost vomited his lunch. So, he probably wouldn't want to eat meat for a while. It was really too horrifying. The claw marks on Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng's faces and bodies were extremely deep. Following the tiny scratch marks, blood continuously flowed out from their bodies. Very quickly, a small patch of the ground was dyed red, and it mixed with the bits of flesh that had fallen to the ground. The scene was truly terrifying. This caused Leng Ruoxue and Ji Yun to turn their heads away, not wanting to look at the bloody scene. After Baby cooperated with Ji Yun to punish Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng, Baby, who clearly hadn't had enough fun with his claws, turned his attention to the vulgar man. After proudly looking at Leng Ruoxue and Ji Yun, whose little face had turned pale from fear, the baby was like a purple lightning bolt. It immediately rushed in front of the vulgar man and roared, "Grandson! Your grandfather is here! Quickly die!" Upon hearing this, Leng Ruoxue's forehead was filled with black lines. As for the pale-faced Yun, his clear eyes were sparkling as he looked at the purple figure of light dancing up and down with admiration. It had a new idol. Chapter 1856. The Tragedy of the Wretched Man. 1. Ji Yun's eyes were fixed on the treasure in the chaotic battle. It seized every opportunity to attack from the left and right, and he couldn't help but cheer for it in his heart. Good luck. Scratch him. Scratch him to death. Ji Yun couldn't help but exclaim in excitement. When Lung Ruoshua saw his helping the evildoer, more cold sweat broke out on her forehead. The treasure, who was looking for an opportunity in the midst of Ji Wus Group's chaotic battle, heard Ji Yun's shout of encouragement and began to scratch even harder. Suddenly, a purple lightning bolt could be seen dancing up and down in the group's chaotic battle. It was accompanied by the wretched man's ear-piercing scream, forming a unique concert. "Arg! That damn little save life. I won't let you off." The wretched man whose face was covered in blood roared in anger and reached out to grab the treasure. However, the petite baby was unusually agile. The vulgar man could only see a purple shadow scuttling around in front of him, but he could not catch it. This fact made him even angrier. "Little save life. You're dead." The vulgar man wiped the fresh blood off his face and continued to roar. "You're the little save life. Your whole family is a little reserved." When Baby heard himself being scolded, he scolded back without any restraint. "Damn it. If I don't kill you today, my last name isn't Sun." The vulgar man was both embarrassed and angry. Other than a red color on his face, there was basically no other color. However, one could imagine how furious he was at this moment when one felt the anger spewing out from his body. "Don't you change your surname to Sun. If you don't have the surname Sun, how can I be your grandfather?" Baby said angrily. At the same time, he started to attack the vulgar man's bottom lane. "Oh woo!" An even more painful and shrill cry suddenly rang out. The vulgar man clutched his lower body tightly and kept jumping around on the spot. His face was filled with an expression of extreme pain. When Ji Woo and the others saw this, they subconsciously stopped what they were doing. However, their eyes were still fixed on the vulgar man. However, with the wretched-looking man's current state, he probably couldn't care about them. Looking at the part he was covering, Ji Woo and the others expressed deep sympathy for him. He wondered if that fellow would still be able to be humane after being hit by the little fox a few times. How pitiful! They laughed gloatingly. At this time, the vulgar man also immediately took out a healing pill and ate it. The pain was relieved a lot, but the strange thing was that there was still a faint pain there, accompanied by a trace of itchiness. What was going on? Although he had doubts in his heart, he had no time to care about them. All his anger was instantly concentrated on the little fox who was smiling at him not far away. He would not let go of this detestable little reserved life. As for these few men, he would continue to deal with them after he had dealt with this annoying little Qianxing. At the thought of this, he immediately shifted his target to his baby. With a leap, he went straight to his baby. However, his baby would not stand there stupidly and wait for him. Instead, it nimbly jumped behind Zhou Kun to seek protection. In this way, it was impossible for Zhou Kun to stay out of it even if he wanted to. Seeing that the little fox had drawn the hatred of the wretched man to him, Zhou Kun was furious and furious. Damn it! He had just wanted to catch his breath with great difficulty, but in the end, he had been harmed by this hateful little fox. At this time, his mind was a lot clearer. Naturally, he could see that this wretched man's strength was above his own. Therefore, he had a slight intention to retreat in his heart. However, he had always been concerned about his face. If he fled without fighting, he would have no face to see anyone after this news spread. That was why he had been holding on. He had thought that since the wretched man had shifted his target to the little fox, there was nothing left for him to do. He could also take the opportunity to leave the battle circle. Who knew that not only was he unable to leave, but he was also dragged into it again. He was so depressed. As the wretched man pounced on Zhou Kun like a tiger, Zhou Kun hurriedly mobilized the divine power in his body to stop him. At this time, Baby stood on top of Zhou Kun's head and commanded him condescendingly, "Hurry up! Beat him down there! He'll never be able to harm women again. Zhou Kun, you should use more strength. What, you didn't eat? Why is it so soft and powerless? Zhou Kun, are you still a man? Can you still do it? To think that you're so big, I didn't expect you to be so weak. You're so useless. Zhou Kun, didn't I tell you to hit him down there? Why don't you listen? Zhou Kun, if you don't listen to my command, I'll have to teach you a good lesson." The baby continued to shout loudly, making Zhou Kun furious and angry. The aura in his body exploded instantly, and a chill pounced on the wretched man. In an instant, the wretched man's lower body was hit again. Arg! Damn it! I won't let you off. You're dead. The wretched-looking man, who was in unbearable pain, roared with all his might. He glared at Zhou Kun fiercely with his eyes that were spewing fire, as if he was going to swallow Zhou Kun alive. On the other hand, Zhou Kun was a little dumbfounded. He was clearly not going to hit that place. Wu, how did this happen? He could not understand. After glancing at the fire-spewing lecherous man and then at Zhou Kun, who was a little dumbfounded, Baby patted Zhou Kun's head like an elder and praised him. Zhou family's kid, well done. Continue. We won't stop until he's beaten into a eunuch. What's a eunuch? Upon hearing Baby's words, Zhou Kun was in a daze, and he couldn't help but ask dumbly. Ha! A eunuch was a man who couldn't have sex and didn't have that thing. Our goal is to turn this vulgar man into the first eunuch of the divine realm. Now, let's work towards this goal. Of course, if you can't turn him into a eunuch, it'll make you one. So, it's up to you. The treasurer issued an order with a hint of threat. As for whether this wretched man would become the first eunuch of the divine realm, it was not within its scope of consideration. If anyone was interested in this title, they could communicate with it themselves. It only cared about creating eunuchs and did not care about the ranking between them. Upon hearing that, Zhou Kun shuddered and became much more awake. However, at that moment, his back was already drenched in cold sweat. It was obvious that he was frightened by the baby. Moreover, in order to ensure that he would not become the eunuch that the little fox was talking about, he could only work hard to let others have this profession. He could not understand why he was afraid of the threat of a little fox. The little fox looked too harmless. However, a guy who looked harmless on the outside was often more terrifying. Now, he had a deep understanding of it. Looks like I can't judge a book by its cover in the future. Of course, he couldn't judge a beast by its appearance. Chapter 1857, The Tragedy of the Wretched Man, 2. At the thought of this, Zhou Kun immediately glared at the wretched man and said loudly, "That I will work hard to make you the first eunuch in the divine realm." After he finished speaking, his body couldn't help but tremble. Who asked this wretched man to be stronger than him? It would be a lie to say that he wasn't afraid, but under the little fox's despotic power, he had no choice but to work hard towards the goal that his baby had set for himself. Upon hearing Zhou Kun's words and the conversation between the man and the fox, the wretched man was furious. His face was green and black, and his chest was panting heavily. The veins on his forehead were also throbbing, and his eyes were burning with anger. At this moment, he was so angry that he couldn't speak. Watching the interaction between the two, Ji Wu and Ji Tao looked at each other with black lines on their foreheads. They didn't know what to say. This little fox's wondrous ideas had already completely convinced them. It was really too creative. However, at this time, they were only focused on being surprised and had completely forgotten that Baby had once said that any man who stayed by his lovely master's side would have to be stabbed. Otherwise, they would have reacted. After all, according to Baby's previous theory, it was impossible for this wretched man to become the first eunuch in the divine realm, unless there were no other men by his master's side. As no one spoke again, the atmosphere at the scene became heavy. Zhou Kun and the perverted man glared at each other while Baby sat on Zhou Kun's head with its silver eyes half closed and a little drowsy. After a long time, a light laugh broke the silence. It was Ji Tao who laughed. At once, everyone's eyes turned to Ji Tao, making him feel a little embarrassed. "Don't look at me like that, you'll be shy." Ji Tao also ridiculed him. Upon hearing this, Ji Wu, who was beside him, quickly jumped away and kept a safe distance from him. Oh my God! It was too terrifying. Ji Wu was a little shocked to hear Ji Tao, who had always prided himself on being a pure man, say such words. He could not help but wipe the cold sweat from his forehead and sneaked a strange look at Ji Tao. To be honest, if these words had been said by Ji Yun, he would not have reacted in such a way. However, the person who had said these words was Ji Tao, so one could not blame him for having such a big reaction. Seeing Ji Wu's reaction, Ji Tao was speechless. Was there a need to? He had only teased them a little to ease the heavy atmosphere, but who knew that everyone would react like this? Although the others didn't show it as obviously as Ji Wu, they all looked at him with a strange gaze, including Zhou Kun. It was as if they didn't know him anymore. This result made him extremely conflicted and depressed. However, Ji Tao's gloominess did not last long. Their attention was once again attracted by the vulgar man. And the cause of this was the sudden moaning. The wretched man couldn't help but cry out and stretched out a hand to calm the commotion in his lower body. Who knew that the more he did, the stronger the reaction, and his cry became even louder. Ji Wu and the others were instantly petrified. What was going on? Why did he suddenly have such a big reaction? And in front of them, there's a woman here, all right? When they thought of Leng Ruoxue, Ji Yun and the rest were immediately enraged. Meanwhile, Baby reacted quickly and jumped onto Leng Ruoxue's shoulder. It used its large tail to cover Leng Ruoxue's eyes so that its adorable master's eyes would not be contaminated by unclean things. As for Ji Yun and the rest, they immediately rushed forward and kicked the lecherous man who was immersed in pain and joy to the ground. Following that, they began to punch and kick him. At this time, in their anger, they didn't even care about using Shen power, but directly used the most primitive attack method. In the blink of an eye, the vulgar man who was in a state of soul travel was beaten until he was dizzy and couldn't distinguish north, south, east and west. Suddenly a crisp sound rang out, accompanied by the wretched man's painful howl. When Ji Yun and the others saw this, they focused their eyes. Only then did they discover that in the chaos just now, someone had kicked the vulgar man's important part too hard and broke it. At this moment, that part was dangling from the vulgar man's body and was about to leave. This situation was somewhat out of everyone's expectations. Just as everyone was dumbfounded and tongue-tied, they saw the important part of the vulgar man's body completely abandon him and leave him. They had successfully created what could possibly be the first eunuch in the history of the divine realm. Instantly, blood gushed out from the lower half of the vulgar man's body, and he lived up to their expectations and fainted. As for whether he fainted from pain or anger, it was not within the scope of everyone's concern. Just as the few of them looked at each other, not knowing what to say, Baby jumped to their side and praised, "Not bad. You've done well, I'm very satisfied." After saying that, a bolt of lightning divine power shot out from the baby's little claw. In an instant, the piece of meat that the vulgar man had dropped on the ground was burned into charcoal, and it emitted a charred smell. Ji Yun and the others stared with wide eyes. This time, that thing could not be connected. Otherwise, if it was well preserved, there might be a possibility of restoration, but the price would definitely not be small. However, this was good. At least it saved money. Ignoring the surprised gazes of Ji Yun and the others, the precious little claw pointed at the unconscious man and said, "What should we do with this guy?" "That? Well, do as you say." "Well, listen to you." Zhou Kun swallowed his saliva with difficulty and said with lingering fear, "Oh, then I'll use him to test out my new skill." Baby laughed evilly. "No problem, you can use him as practice." Zhou Kun quickly tried to please her. He could not deny that he was a little afraid of the little fox. Baby did things cleanly and efficiently. After making the decision, it threw a large water ball at the vulgar man, drenching him like a fallen chicken. Then, its little claws kept releasing the lightning skill, lightning ball, thunder flash, lightning slash, and the others were released one after another. Almost instantly, Ji Yun and the others could only helplessly watch as the unconscious vulgar man on the ground turned from a blood-red color to a charred black. Furthermore, his body was currently emitting the smell of burnt meat. Immediately, everyone was so disgusted that they almost vomited. This was simply too brutal. First water, then thunder. How could he let people live? For a moment, there was an indescribable fear in everyone's eyes when they looked at the treasure. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue walked forward and released a small flame from her hand. With a light flick, the small flame ignited the body of the lecherous man. In an instant, the lecherous man turned into ashes and disappeared from the world. Chapter 1858. The Tragedy of the Wretched Man, 3. This was a blatant act of destroying the evidence. It definitely was. When Ji-yun and the others saw this scene, their thoughts were surprisingly the same. Moreover, seeing how skilled Lung Ruoxue and the little fox were, they must have done this many times. With that in mind, they looked at Lung Ruoxue with fear in their eyes. However, Ji-yun and the other two were better off. The one who was the most chilled was Zhou Kun. Upon seeing that, Zhou Kun was completely dumbfounded. Ooh! As a woman, how could she do such a violent thing? Furthermore, the temperature of the flame that Lung Ruoxue had lit up was extremely high. He could feel the scorching heat even from a distance away. If the flame had landed on him, he would have been burnt to ashes in an instant. His face turned pale at the thought of this. At this moment, he was glad that he was still polite to Lung Ruoxue. Otherwise, he might have ended up like this fellow. After dealing with the wretched-looking man, Lung Ruoxue said to Zhou Kun indifferently, "Also, it's time to deal with your two lackeys. They actually wanted to hand me over to that wretched man just to live. You really don't know what's good for you." Ah! Upon hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, Zhou Kun wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and said carefully, "They're dead?" As he said this, he couldn't help but sneak a glance at Zhou Cheng and Zhou Li, who were lying on the ground covered in blood. He felt a lingering fear in his heart. Looking at the deep claw marks on their bodies, his little heart trembled. It was too terrifying. The little fox's methods were so brutal and bloody that it was unheard of. They should still be breathing. I only let them live because of you. Lung Ruoxue said coldly. I wonder how Miss Lung plans to deal with them? Zhou Kun didn't dare to express his opinions casually, in case he was fixed. He now deeply felt that he was in a weak position. Even a little fox could take care of him. In fact, it was not that he was weak, but that this little fox did not play by the rules. They're from the Zhou family. They'll leave it to you to deal with them. Lung Ruoxue had done Zhou Kun a favor. In fact, she felt that it made no difference whether she killed the two of them or not since they looked so dead now. After all, the treasure would not let them live in peace. Besides, they had committed unforgivable crimes in the special space. Even if she did not punish them, the God Lord's estate would punish them severely. In that case, why should she make too many enemies for herself? A small punishment was enough. On their behalf, I thank Miss Lung for her magnanimity. Upon hearing that, Zhou Kun was obviously relieved. Although he was a little annoyed with Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng's behavior, the two of them were his dogs, after all. He didn't want to let outsiders deal with them. In addition, although he was fighting with the wretched man previously, he had also heard Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng's performance. If it weren't for the fact that he was too busy at that time, he would have taught Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng a good lesson. After all, even dogs had to be obedient. Otherwise, you're not a good dog. Hence, he did not mind Lung Ruoxue's beastie turning them unrecognizable. More importantly, he did not dare to mind. You're welcome. I just don't want to dirty my hands. Lung Ruoxue said nonchalantly. I understand. Zhou Kun smiled in embarrassment. Then, he said worriedly, Miss Lung, that guy just now should be from the Sun family. Now that we've killed him, I'm afraid the Sun family will find trouble with us. So, we have to be more careful. What are you afraid of? He's my grandson, so don't worry too much. My grandson's family won't do anything to us. After hearing Zhou Kun's words, Baby promised shamelessly. I'm telling the truth. Zhou Kun felt a little helpless. It was not the time to joke. The Sun family? When Lung Ruoxue heard this, she frowned. She had only been in the divinity for a short period of time. Other than the most famous 8 divine domains and the headquarters of the weapon craftsmen and alchemy masters, she knew very little about the forces in the divinity. Therefore, she was not sure what kind of status the Sun family had in the divinity. However, she did not care about the 8 divine domains, so why would she be afraid of a mere Sun family? She just did not know if the Sun family in the divinity had any special relationship with the Sun family in the Haotian continent. The Sun family is ranked in the top 10 among the many peak powers in the divine realm. They are a bit stronger than our Zhou family and the Ji family that Ji Yun and the others are from. Furthermore, the Sun family has always been kind and friendly. The patriarch of the Sun family has a wide range of friends and is kind and charitable. He has a very high status in the divine realm. Right now, most of the families outside should already know that we have killed a member of the Sun family. I'm afraid that the patriarch of the Sun family doesn't even need to give an order. Those who have received the Sun family's favor will take the initiative to stand up for the Sun family. Zhou Kun explained. Although the perverted man's death was entirely his own fault, the Sun family would definitely not be completely indifferent about it, which was exactly what he was worried about. Aren't the rules of the competition that life and death are up to fate? Moreover, the competition also clearly states that death in the competition cannot be used as an excuse for revenge. Do you think the Sun family would still dare to play the game despite knowing the truth? Leng Ruoxue said calmly. Miss Leng, the competition is dead, but people are alive. After the competition is over, if the other party finds an excuse to make a move, who can control it? At that time, I'm afraid that the God Lord's estate will stay out of it. After all, as long as it doesn't cause any serious chaos in the God world, the God Lord's estate won't interfere with the conflicts between the clans. Zhou Kun was afraid that Leng Ruoxue didn't understand the twists and turns in his words. Therefore, he deliberately made it clear, which was also tacitly agreed by the various families. But he's dead now, and we've offended the Sun family. What's the point of thinking about this? Leng Ruoxue said with a faint smile. She was not used to Zhou Kun suddenly becoming cautious. That's right, the Sun family has already turned into ashes. What's the use of being afraid now? What's more, just now, the Sun family made such a despicable structure in front of us. Whether it's US or the audience outside the arena, they must have seen it clearly. If the Sun family really wants to find trouble with us for such a disgraceful family member, then they will lose even more face. In addition, I think that the Sun family has done such a disgraceful thing, so they must be more anxious than us. They absolutely won't bother to find trouble with us, so rest assured. If he really wants to find trouble with us, our Ji family is not afraid, hee. Could it be that your Zhou family is afraid? Ji Yun said disapprovingly. His words made Zhou Kun's face turn green and white in anger. The two colors alternated between each other. However, the few of them were now on the same boat. Therefore, even if Zhou Kun was angry in his heart, he had to swallow his anger. Our Zhou family will not be afraid. Zhou Kun said, unwilling to be outdone. He would never lose to the useless coward of the Ji family. Otherwise, how could he survive in the divine realm in the future? That's good. At that time, we can just join forces. Ji Yun suggested. Temporarily turning enemies into friends was still possible. You can make the decision? Zhou Kun was surprised as he could not make the decision on this matter. Of course. My family's old ancestor dotes on me a lot, so he will naturally stand up for me. Ji Yun said in a tsundere manner, his clear and handsome face filled with pride. Upon seeing his appearance, Zhou Kun's heart was filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. He just couldn't understand how that fool, Ji Yun, could have such good luck. Everyone in the Ji family treated him as a treasure, and they were afraid of him melting in their mouths or falling out of their hands. Ruoxue, don't be afraid. If the Sun family really looks for trouble, it'll definitely protect you. Ignoring Zhou Kun's resentful gaze, Ji Yun continued to speak to Leng Ruoxue. Thank you. However, you just need to protect yourself. I can take care of myself. Leng Ruoxue declined. When Ji Tao and the rest heard this, they immediately recalled Leng Ruoxue's act of destroying the corpse and the bloodied methods of that violent little fox. A chill ran down their spines. He probably didn't need anyone's protection. However, after hearing Leng Ruoxue's words, tears immediately welled up in Ji Yun's clear eyes. He looked at Leng Ruoxue with a wronged expression and said, Ruoxue, do you despise me? Woo, How could you reject me? He was sad. You're right, my cute master doesn't like you very, very much. At this time, the treasure, who couldn't bear to look at it, said very impolitely. What it hated the most was Ji-Yun acting pitiful. Who asked it to be so overbearing and think that it was their specialty? Now that Ji-Yun had violated their exclusive rights, it naturally had to retaliate. Baby, you're my idol. How can you be gloating? After Ji-Yun heard his precious words, his expression became even more aggrieved. Idol? What was that? Can it be eaten? Baby heard this and blinked his bright silver eyes, asking curiously. I can't. A few drops of cold sweat fell from Ji-Yun's forehead. He could tell that this little fox was playing dumb. Then who wants to be your idol? Baby pouted his little mouth and said arrogantly. Idol means that I admire you a lot. Ji-Yun helplessly sighed. This little fox was too difficult to deal with. Don't worship me, I'm a legend. Bao Bei said disapprovingly as it waved its big furry tail. Alright, you're a legend. Ji-Yun was speechless. As Lung Ruoxue listened to her precious, seemingly familiar legendary story, she could not help but think of Bing Yao, who was still sleeping in the bracelet. This was something that little fellow always said. However, Wu had always been in closed-door cultivation, so Bing Yao had accompanied him. Even though Bing Yao was only sleeping. Now, she really missed those two guys. After a long time. Pulling her thoughts back to the special space, Lung Ruoxue glanced at the dark-faced Zhou Kun and the depressed Ji-Yun. She said indifferently, Do you guys know what cultivation level that guy had? Chapter 1859. Another Trouble, 1. When the few of them heard this, they quickly looked at Lung Ruoxue. Although they knew that the other party's strength was above theirs, they could not tell the person's strength. That person is a god king. Lung Ruoxue's pink lips parted slightly as she spoke indifferently. What? Upon hearing that, Zhou Kun was immediately shocked. How was that possible? According to common sense, their groups should all be god-tier masters, but now, a god king had actually appeared. Wasn't this bullying? You didn't hear wrong. That person is a god king. Lung Ruoxue saw the shocked expressions on their faces and repeated her words. But our participants should all be god-tier masters. Ji Wu said after some thought. After learning about this, his mood suddenly became extremely heavy. If there were participants above the god tier here, wouldn't they just be waiting to be abused? This was too unfair to them. But the truth is, there are indeed contestants above the god tier here. The person we just met is one of them. Although I don't know if it was an accident or man-made, it is the truth. We must be careful. Lung Ruoxue warned him seriously. When Ji-Yun and the others heard her words, they all nodded in agreement. Upon seeing that, Lung Ruoxue especially reminded Zhou Kun, Young Master Zhou, I know that your Zhou family and the Ji family have some disputes, but the situation here is still unclear. I hope that you can consider the big picture and live in harmony with Ji-Yun and the others. If you have any grudges, you can settle them however you want after you leave this place. But here, no one is allowed to drag the other down, or else don't blame me for being merciless. Her words were both a reminder and a warning. After all, she was not at ease with Zhou Kun. I understand. We're in the same boat now. I won't do anything bad on purpose. Don't worry. Zhou Kun promised. In fact, after knowing that there were participants who were above the level of a god-tier master, his heart began to race. After all, he had offended many people in the divine realm. If an enemy who was more powerful than him came and wanted to kill him using the rules here, he would have no place to cry. Therefore, he was the safest now that he was with Lung Ruoxue and the others. These people wouldn't leave him in the lurch when they saw him in danger. He thought to himself with a slight sense of pride. That's good. Let's quickly leave this place. I'm afraid that your fight just now will attract other people, and it won't be so easy to leave. Lung Ruoxue urged. The few of them nodded and left the place in a hurry. However, before they left, they had to figure out how to bring Zhou Li and Zhou Qing with them. This had become a huge problem for Ji-Yun and the others. After all, these two people were not dead yet. Out of anger, Zhou Kun did not intend to cure them. However, in this way, the two of them would become a burden to everyone. In this regard, Ji-yun suggested that they should just kill them. It would save them a lot of trouble. However, Zhou Kuan did not agree to it. After all, he was a member of the Zhou family. If he really wanted to punish him, he would have to return to the Zhou family. In the end, it was Leng Ruoxue who came up with a good idea for them. She gave Zhou Kuan 2 animal cages, so Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng, who were on the verge of death, were put into the cages as beasts and asked Zhou Kuan to carry them with him. Along the way, Ji-yun couldn't help but laugh out loud whenever he thought of Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng's current state. Whenever that happened, Zhou Kuan would glare at Ji-yun angrily. However, in order not to destroy the temporary alliance between the two families, he had to endure his anger no matter how great it was. Therefore, most of the time, they saw Zhou Kuan looking like a little wife who had been wronged and was suffering. However, what they didn't know was that because they had ganged up on the perverted man from the Sun family, their fame had increased greatly, especially Baby, who had left a deep impression on the audience. At this moment, it had been quite some time since the perverted man had been annihilated. However, many people who wished for the world to be in chaos were still talking about it. The reason for this situation was because ever since the start of the competition, there had been many unexpected incidents happening in the special space. A proper competition had now become a nondescript farce, especially for people like Leng Ruoxue. Almost all the pranks were related to them. After the perverted man made such a vulgar move in public, the master of the Sun family, who was sitting in the exclusive seat of the Sun family, had a slightly serious face. The Sun family members beside him were so scared that they didn't even dare to breathe. In fact, the master of the Sun family usually looked quite kind, but when he really put on a serious face, it was also very scary. At least, there was no one in the Sun family who wasn't afraid. Moreover, they all knew in their hearts that the master didn't like to be kind to others as rumored. However, they did not wish for such a thing to happen. Therefore, the Sun family felt very aggrieved that their master was angry at them. However, at this moment, they did not dare to say anything. Although they didn't dare to say anything, it didn't mean that no one dared to treat this matter as a joke. The Sun clan had an extremely good reputation in the divine realm, and had always been known for being kind and charitable. Basically, anyone who had a request from the Sun clan would get what they wanted in the end. As time passed, the good reputation of the Sun clan had also spread out. In the hearts of many ordinary cultivators in the divine realm, the patriarch of the Sun clan was a figure as transparent as Bodhisattva. It was precisely because of this reputation that the Sun clan was like a fish in water in the divine realm. There were even many times when the clans that were on good terms with them would give them great convenience. What's more, there were many outstanding cultivators among the ordinary cultivators that the Sun family had helped in the past. These were also the resources of the Sun family's network. It could be said that the Sun family's business among the top families was very successful. There were also rumors that the Sun family had the opportunity to compete in the 8 great divine regions this time and replace the Wen family as one of the 8 great divine regions. After all, that was the true supreme power that was recognized by everyone. However, there were both positive and negative sides to everything. No matter how good the Sun family's reputation was outside, there would still be people who would see them as a thorn in their side. The Yu family, who had the same strength as the Sun family and was ranked higher than the Sun family among the top forces, could be considered the Sun family's archenemy. At this moment, the Yu family head, who was rejoicing in the misfortune of others, was standing in front of the Sun family head, looking at him with a face full of sympathy and comforting him with good words. "Master Sun, since it has already happened, my condolences. I really didn't expect that this Sun Li, who usually looks like a man and dog, would actually do such a despicable thing in public. Your Sun family's face has been completely lost by him. In my opinion, this Sun Li absolutely cannot be forgiven easily. It's such a serious game, how could he be so perverted?" However, before the head of the Yu family could finish his sentence, a person beside him tugged at his sleeve and reminded him in a low voice, "Family head, Sun Li is already dead." Although his voice was soft, it was enough for the Sun family to hear him clearly. "Arg! Look at my memory. I actually forgot about that. Thank God you reminded me. The head of the Yu family pretended to be embarrassed. Then he looked apologetically at the ashen-faced head of the Sun family and said, Master Sun, I'm really sorry. I forgot that Sun Li has already died. However, I heard that he has a son who is also a bastard. As the saying goes, if the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. I think it's better to let him cross the line with the next father. In fact, what he wanted to say was that the little brat was not a good person either, so it was better to destroy him as soon as possible. Chapter 1860. Another trouble, 2. The patriarch of the Yu family who spoke seemed to be in his 40s. He was extremely handsome, tall, and sturdy. His strength was at the level of a divine emperor. In terms of bearing, he was even a level higher than the kind and charitable patriarch of the Sun family. However, his reputation in the divine world was not even half of that of the patriarch of the Sun family. The main reason for this situation was that he was not as hypocritical as the patriarch of the Sun family. At least, this was what he thought. It should be known that he and the head of the Sun family were of the same generation and age. The two families were only separated by a city. It could be said that the two could be considered childhood sweethearts who grew up together. However, the two of them had different personalities and did not see eye to eye with each other since they were young. In the eyes of the Yu clan head, the Sun clan head was too hypocritical. No matter who or what he was facing, he would always welcome them with a smile. However, no one knew how many thoughts were hidden in his smile. As for him, he would only treat people who suited his taste differently. No matter how good the others were, as long as he didn't like them, it would be difficult for them to enter his eyes. It was because of these two different personalities that the master of the Sun family gave people the impression of being kind, while the master of the Yu family gave others the impression of being arrogant and unattainable. Thus, in the divine realm, the Yu clan's clan head definitely did not have as many friends as the Sun clan's clan head. However, the Yu clan's clan head was very confident that any of his friends would be able to help him even at the cost of a knife or go through water and tread on fire for him when he was in trouble. As for whether or not the head of the Sun family had this confidence, the head of the Yu family did not know. After all, the Sun family's connections were built up by the accumulation of favors owed to them by others. Whether they could withstand the test of time was still unknown. After the Yu family head said this, although the Sun family head's expression became even more unsightly, he didn't make things difficult for them. After all, he had a good reputation. With so many eyes on him, even if he was furious, he couldn't show it easily. Otherwise, he would fall into the old man's trap. Seeing that the head of the Sun family didn't have much of a reaction, it had to be said that the head of the Yu family was a little disappointed. How he wished he could tear off the hypocritical mask of the old man from the Sun family in public. Unfortunately, this old man did not fall for it. However, it was not easy to see him change his face. It seemed that his expectations were still too high. However, even though the master of the Sun family had suppressed his anger, it did not mean that the rest of the Sun family could. At this moment, the man beside the master of the Yu family very considerately moved a chair over and placed it behind the master of the Yu family. He smiled and said, "Master, it's too tiring to stand. If you have anything to say, you should sit down and talk to Master Sun. Otherwise, Master Sun would have to raise his head to look at you, lest others say that we're looking down on you and deliberately coming to see the Sun family make a fool of ourselves." The implication of his words was that the Sun family didn't even know how to give up their position to their master. They were really uneducated. You're still the most considerate one. The Yu family head's face was full of satisfaction. However, his resentful eyes drifted to the Sun family head, but he was ignored by the Sun family head. "Master Yu, this is the seat of the Sun family. We don't welcome you, so please leave our sight immediately." Finally, a member of the Sun family couldn't bear it anymore and asked him to leave. His face was obviously angry. Who knew that when the Yu family head heard his words, he didn't get angry but laughed instead. He looked at the Sun family head with a slightly aggrieved expression and said, "Sun Yu, your clansmen are actually chasing me away? You have to help me." He called out the rarely heard name of the master of the Sun family. Upon hearing Master Yu call him Sun Yu, Master Sun became even angrier. The color of his face kept changing, alternating between green and black, which was very interesting. This old thing from the Yu family is clearly doing this on purpose. He wants to use my name to provoke me. No way. He wouldn't be fooled, Sun Yu consoled himself in his heart. Originally, the Sun family's old ancestor had given him this name, which meant that great wisdom appeared to be slow-witted, but in the mouth of this old thing from the Yu family, it had become stupid. Therefore, when there was no one around, as long as the Yu family head called his name, he would be furious and the two of them would start to put on a full-out martial arts show. But this was in front of everyone, so in order to maintain his image for many years, he had to endure it. This is indeed our Sun family seat, and we're in the middle of a competition, so it's really not easy for the Yu family head to move around, as it'll affect the fun of others watching the competition. After a long while, Sun Yu gritted his teeth and said, his eyes were even shooting out raging flames. It was a pity that looks couldn't kill. Otherwise, the Yu family head would definitely have died 1,000 times over. Oh, but the place I'm sitting at shouldn't be considered as your Sun family's seat, right? The head of the Yu family asked uncertainly, because he was sitting in the aisle. In addition, almost everyone's mind is no longer on the competition. It seems that the unexpected events in the competition can make them more impassioned, especially, Then, the head of the Yu family continued with an ambiguous expression. You're here on purpose to make me angry, right? Sun Yu said angrily, almost losing his cool. How can you wrong me like this? I'm here to show my concern for you. The master of the Yu family felt wronged again. Thank you. However, I don't need your concern. Sun Yu was filled with hatred. He wasn't a fool. Was he that easy to deceive? This old fogey from the Yu family was clearly here to make a fool of him. Furthermore, it was the kind that would not give up until he angered him to death. Haven't you always been kind to people? Why are you so unfriendly to me? I'm so sad. With our friendship, how could you hurt me like this? The head of the Yu family said pitifully. When the young man behind him saw this, he couldn't help but twitch his mouth and think to himself, is the head of the Yu family addicted to acting? In the immortal realm, who didn't know that the relationship between the two clans was somewhat stiff? What exactly did the master want to do with this? You shut up. Hearing the words of the Yu family head, Sun Ye's forehead was filled with black lines. Since when did he have a friendship with this old thing from the Yu family? If it could be said that he would not easily change his expression in front of outsiders and could maintain a kind smile from beginning to end, but in front of this old man from the Yu family he absolutely could not. Because as long as the two of them met, they would either mock each other or directly fight. In short, the two of them had never been able to get along. Moreover, it was precisely because of this that he would try his best to control his meeting with the old man from the Yu family in public, so as not to expose his true nature. After a long time, everyone knew that the relationship between the two families was not good. Therefore, sometimes, the major families were still willing to cooperate with them and try not to pull them together. But now, this was the elite gathering, he really could not avoid it. It was also because he knew that he would not be able to avoid them like he did in the past that he had ordered his clansmen to stay away from the Yu family's line of sight to avoid attracting this old man to him. However, man proposes but God disposes. This old man still came uninvited. He was depressed. Chapter 1861. Another trouble. 3. You're shouting at me. The head of the Yu family continued to feel wronged, his dark and shrewd eyes actually welling up with tears. When the young man beside him saw this, he only felt as if a flock of crows had flown over his head, and it seemed like they had pooped quite a lot on his head. It was true. This was the feeling he had. Because the reaction of the family head was simply too shocking. This was a little too much, right? What was the master doing? He was very confused about this. Damn it, don't give me that look. Upon seeing this, Sun Yu growled in a low voice with a black face. The Sun family members were clearly frightened. Did he see a ghost? What they didn't know was that the Yu family head's current performance was all learned from Ji-yun. Seeing Ji-yun's current appearance on the screen, he felt that it was quite interesting. Thus, he casually used it. As for the effect, he was extremely satisfied. Isn't this your favorite look? The head of the Yu family blinked his large, bright eyes and asked with a puzzled expression. These words gave everyone a huge shock. Damn it, when did I like this? Sun Yu saw that the old undying Yu family's old man was being so unreasonable, and his lungs were about to explode. However, he still had to forcibly suppress the anger in his heart. Just thinking about it made him feel very aggrieved, and the Yu family head seemed to have him in the palm of his hand. He was getting more and more addicted to playing with him. On the countless nights we spent together, when we were drinking and singing, you told me yourself that I was the most important person in your heart. Have you forgotten? Or do you not dare to admit it? The Yu family had continued to ask, under the moonlight and flowers, they had done it before, but they were always scolding or fighting, drinking and singing. The two of them had also done it before, but when they didn't get along, he had smashed the Sun family's garden many times. As for the most important person in his heart, it depended on how others understood. After all, the most important person didn't have to be the person he liked. The enemy was also very important to him. You, the Yu family head's words made Sun Ye's entire body tremble in anger. The cold air that was released from his body caused the surrounding 100 miles to be immersed in an icy cold atmosphere. They could feel the temperature of the competition ground suddenly drop. Most people were still confused and couldn't figure out what was going on. Only the two families sitting on the left and right of the Sun family's seat understood. However, at this moment, they were all sizing up the patriarch of the Yu and Sun families with ambiguous looks on their faces. They couldn't help but wonder in their hearts, so the relationship between these two people is so close. It was still widely rumored that they were at odds with each other. It seemed that everyone had been deceived by their smokescreen. However, when they thought about the two's gender, they could understand their difficulties. After all, they were the heads of their respective families. He had no choice. When they thought about the concubines of the master of the Sun family, they felt that the master of the Sun family should not have married so many wives. Wasn't this harming others? In comparison, the head of the Yu family only had one wife. With this comparison, the people of the two families immediately felt that the head of the Yu family seemed to be more affectionate. Sensing the strange gazes of the people around him, Sun Ye's expression became more and more unsightly. However, he still held back the monstrous anger in his heart and didn't flare up. However, the change in his expression made it clear to many people that the head of the Sun family wasn't always good-tempered, but he didn't touch his bottom line. And obviously, the head of the Yu family should be his bottom line. The surrounding neighbors looked at the head of the Sun family, then sneaked a glance at the happy head of the Yu family, and suddenly sighed. The Yu family's head was so generous and calm that he didn't care if his secret was discovered. In comparison, the Sun family's head was a little petty, so at this moment, many people chose to stand on the Yu family's head side. As for the Sun family's head, he became a heartless rat in their eyes. From this, it could be seen how powerful the power of the 8 trigrams was. The head of the Yu family saw that the effect he had created was unexpectedly good, and admired Sun Ye's flickering light and dark expression for a while. When he saw that it was good, he patted his butt and left without taking a cloud with him. However, the aggrieved expression he had when he left and the hesitation to speak was really thought-provoking. Not far away, in the Ning family's exclusive seats, the head of the Ning family, who had been watching the movements of the Sun family, naturally saw the interaction between the two family heads. However, in the confrontation just now, the one who had the upper hand was obviously the head of the Yu family. As for Sun Yu, he was afraid that there were too many things that he had no choice but to endure. However, the head of the Ning family knew that Sun Yu was a vengeful person. The Yu family was probably going to be in trouble. However, he believed that since the head of the Yu family dared to provoke him in his face, he must have a plan in mind and should have taken precautions long ago. And the truth was just as Master Ning had guessed. The Yu family and the Sun family had been at odds for many years, and they were both very clear of each other's bottom line. Thus, as long as they didn't touch the other's bottom line, the two families would still maintain a peaceful relationship on the surface, but small disputes in the dark were inevitable. Old Man Ning, what are you looking at? At this time, the first elder of the Craftsmen's Guild headquarters couldn't help but ask curiously when he felt that the Ning family's master was absent-minded. I'm looking at the Sun family. I'm afraid they'll do something bad to Shuer. The master of the Ning family said honestly. They dare? If they dare to lay a finger on Shuer, I will make the Sun family disappear from the divine realm. After hearing the words of the master of the Ning family, the great elder immediately became angry. In terms of connections and power, the Sun family could not be compared with him, the great elder of the Craftsmen's Guild. Although the difference in strength between the two was not big, their status in the divine realm was obviously not on the same level. After all, his specialty was refining artifacts, and cultivation was secondary. When the Ning family clansmen and some of the representatives of the Craftsmen's Guild heard the great elder's bold words, they couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. They thought to themselves, "Great elder, do you have to be so excited?" However, they could also tell that they could offend anyone but Leng Ruoxue. Otherwise, just the Grand Elder, Master Ning, and Uncle Long alone would be enough to make any of the top forces in the divinity disappear from the face of the earth. Thinking of that possibility, they all felt their hair stand on end and their hair stand on end. Why are you so excited? I only said that I was afraid. I didn't say that the Sun family would definitely harm Shuer. The master of the Ning family saw that the great elder was so excited that he couldn't control himself, so he quickly said, I'm afraid it's possible. Don't tell me you don't know the true face of that thing from the Sun family. The great elder said unhappily. People like them who held high positions in the superforces would naturally not be deceived by the fake appearances of others. Therefore, he did not dare to say that he knew everything about the things that the Sun family had done in private. However, he had heard about it. It was just that it was none of his business, and he was not the self-proclaimed savior of the divine world. Therefore, he was too lazy to care about it. However, if the matter involved the little girl Shuer, they naturally could not stand by and watch. So what if I know? He hasn't even made a move yet. The master of the Ning family sighed helplessly. He naturally didn't put the Sun family in his eyes. In addition, that member of the Sun family was a hooligan in public. Therefore, after the end of the elite gathering, the Sun family would definitely be in a terrible fix for a while. After all, this matter had a bad influence on the Sun family. However, he was very curious why the Sun family would do such a despicable act in public. We still have to take precautions. The first elder said anxiously. All of you calm down. We're going to respond to changes by staying the same. What's the Sun family? Is there a need for you to be so anxious? At this time, Uncle Long, who had closed his eyes and pretended to be asleep, spoke again. No one dared to ignore his words. The first elder and the master of the Ning family listened humbly and put the matter aside for the time being. After all, the elite gathering had not ended yet. It was still too early to think about these things. At the same time, Leng Ruoxue and the others who were in the special space were in trouble again. This time, it was not Leng Ruoxue who had caused trouble, but Zhou Kun. Originally, they had found a place to set up camp and planned to have a good rest. After wandering around aimlessly for days, they felt a little restless, so they wanted to have a good rest before they encountered a strong enemy. However, just as they finished preparing dinner, they met two people who were planning to spend the night in the open. It turned out that the two of them had also taken a liking to the campsite they had found. However, based on the principle of first come, first served, the two of them wanted to discuss with them and give them a portion of the campsite. Leng Ruoxue and the rest saw that the attitude of the two of them was not bad and their abilities were above theirs. They did not want to offend them and thus agreed. However, Zhou Kun was the one who caused the problem. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.